Let's see if this is working. Shall we? Let's see if this is working. Is it working? I think it is. I think it is. Hello! How are you all doing today? So, this should be working. In a bit, hopefully. Which is the whole thing of putting exclamation question, and it should show up in there. And eventually the idea is that I'll be able to dual cast onto Twitch and YouTube, and both the questions from either will be able to turn up on that. So, if you prefer one over the other, you'll be able to pick which one you chat through. And Discord, of course, if you want to put questions up. Maybe I even managed to make it try. We are currently supported by a fluffy research assistant, but he may disappear up to my bed, knowing him, the moment I start building things. Because you are not a construction-minded canine. You are a wait till the construction's done and come down to demand biscuits canine. Aren't you, realistically? You do occasionally help me. You're very good at sleeping on a woodpile and making sure it goes nowhere. Absolutely exceptional at that. And you are number one when it comes to making sure that no one walks up off of the pack lunches. You're really good at that. Good boy. Yes, you are. Hello, and how are you all doing? Am I getting bleated? Yes, I am. Let's see. Are we being joined by someone else?
I didn't mean drag me in, but all right, sure. I guess we're doing it.
you did message me. Here we go again, Fleet. So in the nicest way.
Oh well, this is my life now. Hey, you started it.
Yeah.
You started it.
Yes. Well, it's good, especially good for me at the moment, because if I start having a coughing fit, I can go mute and you can answer the question.
Yes, I can do this.
Yes, and
Hello
currently...
everyone, Fleet's here.
Hello. So, I have assembled one of the many sets of... Basically, Drac filled the back of my car up, because mine's an estate, so my car basically filled it up, dropped the back seat and filled the back up with Kallax parts. And I've already assembled... I kid you not, I think he's given me the internals for two 3x4s and two 2x4s, but he hasn't given me the outer bit for one of the 3x4s. So I have to get that off him on the next trip. I think, because that's the only way that makes sense of all the parts. Yeah, when he gets back from the US, he's offered to drive down here. In fact, the whole shipshape crew could be turning up down here. Are we settling in? Yes, Tanif, we are settling in slowly. Slowly we are settling in.
I mean, I'd offer some help, but I'm currently between jobs right now since Fleet lost his job yesterday.
Oh, how did that happen?
But no. Oh, they just decided they decided that having a temporary worker wasn't efficient, so so instead of having someone who lives locally and can commute, they're going to bring people over from Manchester on a daily basis to work in Sheffield. All right.
That sounds stupid. The only way that makes sense is if they're staying on the Manchester department section's payroll rather than their payroll. So it makes them look like they're more profitable in Sheffield when they're not. Because that's going to be costing Manchester a bomb.
Yep, most likely. And it's also because they're having to pay an agency to hire me. So, where these people are on their own books. I'm not angry or anything. I've had a great time working there, and the lads have been fantastic. And to be fair, they were nice enough to give me half a week this coming week to actually get some money behind me before laying me off, which is decent of them.
Yeah, that's nice. That is helpful.
Anyway, enough about Fleet. Let's get into the
Fleet,
questions.
is your patron by any chance still active?
It is.
Hey Dave, thank you. And again, all donations received on my channel at the moment are going towards Kallax, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to be building a Kallax in front of you all, to show you what I'm building and working with. And I will make the live chat disappear during that point, but the Discord chat will stay up because we're still answering questions.
Just quickly, Ruinon has said apparently we need to deactivate 0.2 0.2.1, we're getting dupes in the Discord log, apparently.
Okay, so let me go to 0.21. Does he mean 0.04 or 0.02?
Means he said, quote, can you deactivate 0.02.1?
I've got. I've unenabled one of them. If it stops working, I unenabled the wrong one. Okay?
I'm not even using it. It's not my show. That's tomorrow. See, you all come to Dr. Clarke and Drac for your naval history. You come to me to hear a mad Yorkshireman talk about random nonsense and sing praises of ships that don't deserve to be praised.
So, let's see what questions we've got coming up have come up into Discord already. And at this point, I have to get rid of the YouTube live control panel thing, which lovely OBS decided to make appear somewhere. Why it adds these things to my stuff? I do not know. Stick it down there so I don't know. So it's now out of the way and I don't have to muck around with it. Question 2 to 4. Of the 6 post-HMS Dreadnought and pre-HMS Orion 12-inch armed Dreadnoughts the British used, if you could choose one of them to become HMS Dreadnought, which one would that be?
Do you mean she takes Dreadnought's place as the first Dreadnought? Or is she named HMS Dreadnought? What do you mean? Because that's two entirely different kettles of fish.
I think replace the first Dreadnought. So let's see. We've got the Bellerophons. They're pretty much our Dreadnoughts, so that's not really changing anything. So there's no point picking one of them.
Yeah, the St. Vincent's and the Bellerophons. I don't think there's any point in actually having them become Dreadnought because they're just Dreadnought with extra steps. It's going to come down to a bunch of the 1 and 2 offs that had cross-deck firing. And which one of those is less rubbish?
Well, actually, honestly, the first 6 are the Bellerophons and St. Vincent's. And then after that, we have the St. Vincent. Then we have the Neptune, and then we have the Colossus class, and then thank God we have the Orion class. Basically, you could pick anyone from the if you're going to say from the first 6 Bellerophon and St. Vincent's, it's got to be the St. Vincent's because they are the best of the dreadnoughts.
And if it's any of the pre-HMS Orion 12-inch dreadnoughts,
do I have to?
So the Neptune and Colossus, apparently.
You know my opinion on cross-deck firing.
Yes, I agree.
Well, and
this is one of the things we agree on.
And wing turrets fully.
Why? Stop! Don't do wing turrets unless you have to deal with triple expansion engines.
Hello! Oh, food's arrived. I've got food. So, I actually thought that wasn't coming this evening. That's one of the reasons why I started this time it was. I thought it wasn't coming. It's coming. I've got turkey bacon on burgers and veg.
Ooh,
it's vaguely healthy.
Cheese.
On the grounds that they have probably the best armor scheme of the entire lot, as long as I manage to not throw up looking at their gun design, it's got to be. And because I personally prefer her to any, or there was Hercules. Just because she's called Hercules. At that point.
Fantastic.
That's my entire point. So
Oh.
You should notice that the food arrives, and I immediately start getting pawed by someone. Going, hello, I'm your friendly poodle. You've got your dinner. Seriously, this dog just goes for food. Right.
She, him. I keep forgetting.
It's a he. He's called Raleigh.
He wants the food.
He's named for Sir Walter Raleigh. And
Ronan, what have you done?
Yeah.
We had it working, and then you've poked it, and now it's not working. Stop.
Right.
So what was the next one? It was from Gunnery Officer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the Seafire is the best carrier fighter in Pacific 945, or is it hands down there for you, Corsair or DF6F?
I mean, you're all forgetting the elephant in the room.
Which one do you want to go for?
I was going to go with Super Corsair or the early models of AF Bearcat, which just filter on stream before the war ends.
I'd say at that point it's probably the late model Hellcats because of how well how used their pilots are and how skilled they are with them. The Corsairs are very good, but I'm going to give it to the Hellcats because I like the pugnacious fighters. Thank you, Bob Fry, for the Far Shell Fund.
And also, Seafires, like the Seafire is not a good carrier air fighter.
It's killing itself every time. It's a good fighter. It's killing itself every time it lands.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then Knight 6831. Follow up to question 224. Why would the Germans only build a response to Lord Nelson's same dreadnought and not larger dreadnought as chosen in question 224? No, they build a response to the dreadnought, but let's be honest, those dreadnoughts are not going to be that much bigger than their own. Than what they originally did. It's not. Let me put it this way. Nothing short of an Orion being built changes substantially what the Germans build in response.
Yeah, like the Germany's first dreadnought is going to be Nassau. Just it is.
Yeah. Do you mind not knocking my Ambrew bottle over? In the pursuit to try and get closer to my turkey bacon, you're knocking my Ambrew bottle over.
Oh my goodness. It's horrific, it's tragic.
It's basically mutiny.
Yep, clobber 'em, boys.
It's mutiny. So
Sheridan, I think.
If the Royal Navy had decided to stand others on the foreign office guns for dual purpose instead of 4.7 and 5.25, how much displacement would it have saved on the King George V class, and how could you use the free weight? Cumulatively, how much? Depends if you go for an extra turret, because you could probably on the same weight get an extra twin 4.5.
On both sides, or are you super firing that over the aft?
On both sides, but you could also do it super firing over the aft and over forward as well. Which would be fun to have, let's be honest, there'd be people to... But no, let's put it this way. Would it be enough to substantially change the armament? No, because they'd have done it. Would it be enough to substantially change the armour? No, because again, they would have done it. What it would have done, more than likely, is I think they wouldn't have gone for an extra pair, as much as I would love them to, extra couple of pairs of turrets, because I think they'd have carried on with the design, with it as it was, with the 4.5s in that position. I think the most you're going to get out of it is it's going to allow them to organise logistics and crews that much better. But let's be honest, the 5.25 is a far more suitable secondary gun for a capital ship than the 4.5 at that point, because it actually does have cruiser capabilities, so it sort of fills the role of both the anti-surface secondary and the anti-air secondary. Thank you, Rick Vasava. What's the problem? Do you want to go garden? Excuse me a second, I'm going to leave you with the lovely dulcet tones of Fu while I take someone to the garden, because apparently he has just decided that it is absolutely vital he goes. Come on. Come on. Well, you're not getting my dinner, so it's obviously garden you want, because you're not getting the dinner. Come on. No. Nothing.
Bloody hell. I disappear for a second and then Alex goes off. Difficult. Right, I guess I'm taking over for a second. Right then. Where were we? Before Alex decided to jump off for a second. Chandlelord. He asks, reapplying questions from prior Bruships. You can bring 3 capital ships, BBs and BCs from each of the belligerent powers. No Hispanias. Sorry, Fleet of Oceans. I assume you're talking about bringing them forward to be preserved. Which ones and why? Well, apart from being mildly ticked that I don't get to bring the Hispanias forward, apart from that minor annoyance, I think it's got to be... That's a tough one. That is a tough one. So, hang on. So, bring from each of the belligerent powers. You can bring... So I can bring it to... So, am I bringing the belligerent ships to World War II, or am I bringing it to the future? And which war? To World War II, so I'm bringing ships from World War I to World War II? Is that what you're saying, Chandlelord? Because I'm a little confused.
What's the question? Playing question?
From Chandlelord, reapplying question from prior brew ships. You can bring 3 capital ships, BBs and BCs from each of the belligerent powers. No Hispanias, sorry, Fleet of Oceans. Which ones and why? The problem is, I have no context. I'm trying to acquire context.
Yeah. From World War I to World War II.
Right, okay. Well, that's fairly straightforward. If we're talking about bringing capital ships forward for the RN, assuming that they don't overwrite their World War II counterparts, you probably bring 3 QEs forwards. Alternatively, if you want to be spicy, you bring and have a slightly different off-the-cuff idea. You bring the 3 most modern Splendid Cats and Renown forward. Or you bring Renown Repulse and a Splendid Cat. Renown Repulse Tiger forwards.
Mm-hmm.
To give the RN more fast capital ships, but the problem with that is that Renown Repulse won't have their armor fit. So you're probably better off bringing Splendid Cats forward, because their armor will enable them to resist modern 8-inch guns, whereas Renown's armor as built might have problems.
And let's be honest, they'd be a really scary surprise for certain fleets. Imagine the Battle of River Plate, where the flagship is HMS Tiger.
Yeah, the problem is, though, they're going to need reworking. Fire control fits and radar fits, at least.
Yes, but in one good sense, you're going to have them in their unvarnished original state, so you're not reworking a reworking of a reworking.
True.
Which does make things to an extent easier.
For France, it's fairly obvious. You bring forward as many of the Britannias as you can.
Mm-hmm.
The Germans, it's fairly obvious. You go with Bayern, Baden, and Hindenburg.
You sure we want Hindenburg? Sure you don't want one on the battle cruisers?
That's what I said, Hindenburg. The battle cruiser Hindenburg.
Yeah, but let's be honest, that was not completed in time.
for World War One, didn't she sortie a few times? Are we thinking of the same ship? The half sister to Lutzow and Derflinger? Am I misremembering ship names here?
No,
I could be.
you are remembering it correctly. I'm misremembering ship names. For some reason, I was thinking. For some reason, I was thinking Hindenburg was a Mackerson. I have no idea why, but I was thinking Hindenburg was a Mackerson. No idea why. I apologise entirely for that. That was entirely my brain, which had decided that Hindenburg was a Mackerson for some reason. And I was listening and going, it's bold to take the second in the Mackerson class, not the first in the Mackerson class. And the other Mackersons got completed.
Well, for the Russians, it's fairly simple. You bring back the Emperor Marias. You bring back the Black Sea Fleet battleships, because that gives us the 3 dreadnoughts in the Black Sea.
Or you bring back. We've already talked about if you can bring forward the same ships. Why not bring forward three of the Angats?
Well,
and then have six gambits.
That's true, but all the Imperator Marias are gangets built specifically for the Black Sea.
Yes, you can definitely agree with that. You can't really argue with that. Oh, caramba! Today has been a fun day.
I can imagine.
I'm glad to have you all here and to be chatting with you. But whilst we move to the next question, I am going to let my very kind colleague set up the next question while I set up the construction.
I see. Okay, we're moving to the next question, apparently. All right.
Because let's be honest, of the American ships available in World War I time, which of those would you actually want to World War II?
You basically just bring whatever standard is most modern at the end of the war. And for Japan, you basically just bring forward probably Fuso and Yamashiro again to give you an extra pair of 14-inch capital ships. And that's pretty much it. And for the Italians, again, same thing. You just bring forward whatever the 2 most modern dreadnoughts are. So, Henk asks, Doctor, according to sources I have access to, Blucher 1908 and Blucher 1936 was built at the same yard, but I am unable to affirm if they were built on the same slipway. Do you know by chance?
As I understand it, they are built in a slipway which is in the same position. But it is not the same slipway because it has been highly modified to take the increased weight and also the distribution points. It's kind of like someone recently commented on one of my videos because I was talking about CVA-1 and I was talking about the Merlin helicopter as well as the Sea King, and they're going, the Merlin is not available for 10 years. At least, but it's and actually, no, the Merlin was being considered when they were designing CVA-1 because they worked out that by the time the CVA-1 entered service, and then it might have Sea King for 10 years, but then it could be in service for another 30 years after that, and we have Merlin for 30 years. So you had to start thinking about the future helicopter project as early as you were designing the carrier. Because you have to design the carriers around their future aircraft. This is one of the interesting things and one of the problems you have with certain carrier designs that are in service now. Not the Queen Elizabeth class, actually, which is fairly good. Queen Elizabeth class, mainly to save money, they've made them so generic in terms of their internal fit that they can take pretty much anything. But, yeah, you have to do that. So it's the same, though, when you're talking about yards, because, oh, great, I have a wonderful yard. I can build this. I can put this in. Hang on. The weight positions are completely different on the new design than they were on the old design. How am I going to deal with this? Well, you're going to deal with this the same way you always have to deal with these things. You're going to have a conversation with an engineer. And that engineer is going to go, well, we're going to need to do this, this, this. And then you're going to have a conversation with a builder who's going to sit there and going to go, oh, it's sort of possible. And, the overtime's probably going to be massive if you want it by then. And all the costs, and at a certain point you're going to have a conversation with someone who's probably going to be some kind of banker who's going to look at you and go, you're spending how much? And then after you've had the conversation with the banker, you're going to actually spend enough money that if it's in any way related to your personal money, is going to give you a small version of an aneurysm every time you look at it. So basically, it's like moving house. I went in for a quick visit to IKEA the other day. I came out with my bank account looking severely depressed. And I haven't even bought the Kallaxes yet. I was just literally buying the stuff, there to get spare parts to build the Kallaxes, and to sort out a few other things which I had to do while I was there.
Oh, good lord!
Literally, there was a very strong temptation to start crying. An incredibly strong temptation. Now, Kallaxes, as you can see, are pretty darn easy to assemble. Quietly just putting shelving together. And once I've got the shelving done, we can then have the joy of opening up boxes of books, and you can comment on the books I'm pulling out. How's that sound?
Oh, that'll be... sure, I can do that. I'm good at words.
You're good at words, Fleet. Occasionally. Right, who's the next question?
Okay. Because I'm... yes, I'm doing the thing. It's from Sharandine, who asks... If Henderson had managed to start a modest sloop program in 1934, would a decent justification have been for 8 experimental ASW research squadrons, same name for MCVs and same name for mine layers, and how many more fitted for but not with could have realistically been sneaked in as Admiralty yachts, marine survey vessels, and emergency relief vessels in, say, the Caribbean, China Station, and New Zealand?
Okay, he did actually look at this. There is actually some interesting things around this, and it was funding and the lovely people at the Treasury being the people of the Treasury. But realistically, what you're looking at in terms of costs and in terms of expenses is not much. The program which they were initially talking about, which the Navy was trying to get, would have seen them constructing roughly 12 sloops a year from roughly 1934 onwards. This is what sections of Navy were considering and were trying to put forward the case for. So, again, if you figured out 1934 onwards, if you got 12 done a year, and they're building roughly 16 to 18 destroyers a year, if you're doing 12 of those a year, you're going to have completed roughly 30 escorts a year, modern escorts a year, from 1934 onwards. So that means, by considering that they did actually complete roughly 20 sloops in that time anyway, you would have actually 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. You would have probably had roughly 72 sloops, an extra 50 sloops in service at the beginning of World War II. And let's be honest, that's not exactly going to be a bad set to have. Now, the really fun thing, and this is, I think, where they ran short, was they couldn't decide whether they would get ocean-going sloops or inshore sloops, because they needed both for the different roles of them. The smaller sloops, like the Fish class, and the larger sloops, like the Bittons, etc. So, that's where your problem lies. Working out which ones you're going to get, and what they're going to do for you. Same as everything in life. But again, if they managed to get their way with the inshores and the outshells and gone for the full dream program, as one gentleman put it in a letter, one admiral put it in a letter to another one, they would have got 8 of each. And they would have got 16 destroyers a year. So they would have got... Then it would have been of the ocean-going type of sloops. Let's see, they originally built 6 of the inshore type, so they would have had 8 times 6, which is 48, so they'd have had an extra 42 of the inshore type, and they got 14 of the ocean-going type, and the transoceanic type sort of thing, and they would have had an extra 34 of those. So it wouldn't have been quite the same, but it would have been fairly useful. I don't think anyone would argue with that as a force structure. Now, the interesting thing about Kallaxes, of course, is they only actually use 8 screws. For the whole thing is 8 screws. Which does make life interesting. But also does work quite well. Gives you quite a lot of rigidity. What's the next question?
What about a very simple one? Never mind, you've got it.
Procure Statista Class Astra, modelled by Factors. What do I want to do?
Dragon would have a lot to say on this. Dragon would have an awful lot to say on this.
Dragon would have an awful lot to say on this quite often. Me, in my case, it's... Look, if you're going to have a spaceship for space, you have to design it around one of two ways. You either have to design it so it can fight enemy at all angles, or you have to design it so it always points its front at the enemy. You either want something which is basically designed to dive into the battle, or something which is designed to stand off and blast away at the enemy. There's no in-between. Because the moment you do one, if you've got a stand-off ship, and you dive into the enemy, you're going to get attacked from all sides, and your weak spot is going to quickly be exposed. You're not going to be able to engage them, unless you're a small, nimble fighter. Then you basically hope that your nimbleness manages to avoid your weak spot being targeted that easily. If you are a stand-off ship, therefore you stand off and fight. But if you're an all-round fighter ship that's able to fight all round, then you want to get into the enemy as quickly as possible, because if you stand off at range, you can't use all your weapons. Which is one of the interesting things about Star Trek, actually, because if you look at them, the Cardassian ships are very much designed for bombardment, and the Federation ships are designed for getting into a fight. Whereas the Klingons actually have most of their offensive weaponry orientated forward, so they're almost bombardment ships, but of course they are very aggressive and like to get into a fight. They don't have good all-round weaponry, though. So the thing is...
Unless, of course, if you notice, the Klingons do have one or two ships that are designed to brawl, but you see them as they're usually larger scale capital units which are designed for that purpose.
Yeah, and that's why it's always struck me when you saw the Deep Space Nine battles, etc., and the Federation was standing off and fighting from range, and I was going, that's wrong for your ship designs! The Cardassians are weak when you get into them! Don't let them bombard from range! Dive into them! Smash them! Get close! That's how you beat the Cardassians! But I'm a little bit more brutal than most of my Federation counterparts. I do realise this.
Yes, you are, Dr. Clarke. Next question from Molly Madison. If you were able to handwave into existence one of these packages on 1st of March 1938 for the RN, which would you choose? 2 Illustrious class, 6 York class, or 6 Ruler class? What the hell is a Ruler class?
Ruler class are escort carriers, I think, from memory. York class are the county class,
here we go.
The cut price counties, and the 2 Illustrious. And this is 1939?
38.
38.
1st of March 38 to be precise.
1st of March 38. It's got to be the Illustrious class. As much as I would love the rulers, etc., they are easy
really give.
And the Yorks I hate on a point of honour. I just hate the Yorks. I have great respect for their crews and what they accomplish, but I absolutely despise the whole idea of the cut price counties. Absolutely despise it. Because you spend almost as much and you don't get the same capabilities of full fat county. So you've created an 8-inch cruiser which is going to be treated as an 8-inch cruiser threat, and you have not given it's only got 6 guns, and it's slower, and all sorts of problems with it. And frankly, no. I have done a whole video on the cut price counties, and being cruel about them. I decided bending over was not a good idea. Hello.
Right. So what's next? Come on, Fleet, engage brain. Next question from Leslie, not Yonai again, Ian. Dr. Alex Clarke, what about the A7M1 as a carrier plane?
I've seen worse suggestions. The A7M1. Oh, good lord. If I remember correctly, wasn't that the one that had the problems with its... I'm going to check to get a picture because I've spent too much time with the various designs today. Too much time with the various designs.
Don't look at me. I'm no good. Who look like Rex's hanger?
No, I've been getting out the Japanese books. The SNM Repo Strongwind produced by Mitsubishi. Ah, yes. It was basically the far too late Japanese answer to the Hellcat in some regards. It's pugnacious. It's basically improved Zero in almost every single way, but they only managed to build 9. The fact it even gets an Allied reporting name is contentious as far as I'm concerned, because frankly, with so few produced, why did it need one? Just when it turns up, just call on a UAD, call it UFO. Sorry. What was I saying? UAD.
I suppose. It's an interesting way of thinking about it, but it works, I guess.
Mm. Well, let's be honest. No one. There's only 9 produced, so if you see one, it's what the frigate. What's that? That's an actual aircraft?
Oh, well there you are then.
And it won't be an actual aircraft for long at that point because they when they did fly, they flew into hordes of American aircraft, and thanks to the big blue blanket. And it was a case of, yes, we have a really great aircraft with really great pilots. Wonderful. How do they feel about 100 to 1 odds?
Oh no, Dr. Clarke, you're mistaking it completely. We had a good aircraft with great pilots.
Yeah.
Keyword being had.
Pretty much. It's just terrible. It's like when I was putting together the notes for the video on the I-400s. And looking at design, looking at the Japanese doctrine. Japanese doctrine has something which is similar to that, floating around as an idea from about the 1920s onwards. From about 1922 was the earliest mention of it. And the thing is, they get forgotten. They have this idea and they don't deliver on it. And that would have been a more useful idea in so many ways than the Yamato class. And then there was someone who immediately said, well, the Allies would have known about it, would have responded to it. Well, look at how well the Allies responded to the Yamato class. The trouble is, whilst the Germans, whenever they have something, they have the habit that the Allies actually believe the German hype. This is the weird thing in World War II. The Germans, the Allies, always believe their claims about their weapons capabilities. The Japanese,
the same thing we saw
and
with
the Italians, the Allies both sit there going, no, it's the Japanese, it's the Italians. No, it can't do that. And you sit there and go, yes, it can. It does. Think about the amount of times the Brits get caught napping by the Italians, literally because they do not believe that the Italians could possibly have a weapon system as good as the Italians are claiming. Basically, every time the British end up with egg on their face, it's because of that. And usually, what's worse is, it's a case of Cunningham and half the fleet realises and goes, yes, watch this, and then there's some bright spark somewhere and goes, no, the Italians, the Itais, all that sort of language comes out, and they'll never have that. They do have that. And it's the same with the Americans and the Japanese. Let's be honest, the Japanese could have 20 of those submarines wandering around in 1941. And let's be honest, what do the Americans believe about them? The Americans probably believe, like the M2 that the British had, that it's got their constant risk of sinking, or they've sunk. They've sunk themselves. Well, what they don't realise is that the Japanese put absolutely massive seals on them, and the compartment was as separated off as it physically freaking could be.
And also, of course, they were the mature end of a development line the Japanese have been working on for nearly 20 years. The
Yes.
Japanese were not unfamiliar with operating seaplanes off submarines.
No.
They had 20 years of experience doing this.
Yes, but try and explain that to half the American admirals.
Yes, it's not really possible.
No. Sadly enough, we really are, quite often, our own worst enemies. Britain, America, all these powers are quite often their own worst enemies.
Basically.
Do you know what's really annoying me?
Where were we?
I'm always
Stephen
getting
Richard asks,
breathless assembling this thing. And this is the joy of pneumonia, getting over it. I'm actually getting breathless assembling a Kallax.
don't do yourself a mischief.
No, it's fine. I'll get it done before I get too unwell. I've already built one today, and I'll probably build another one.
You'll forgive me if...
Yeah. Carry on.
What if the North Carolinas have been built with 12 14-inch guns? Does this affect the US carriers? I mean, congratulations, you've got the North Carolinas with 14-inch guns. That's basically the only thing you've changed. You've not changed the follow-on battleships, you've not changed US carriers, it's just... Congratulations, the North Carolinas can now throw more Dakar at things.
That's pretty much it.
Well done.
It's not really going to change the carriers. I'm trying to think what it could change. That's an interesting question. What could it change? I don't think it's going to change the carriers. What it might interesting enough though is if you're going for that design with the capital ships, what that might change your design to go with the cruisers. Because remember, a lot of our efforts are put into making sure cruiser designs harmonise with battleship designs in this period, because you want them to look alike from a distance. So that could be the interesting thing.
Could be, actually, yeah.
That's more likely going to have an impact than anything else.
Second question from your civil officer. Thoughts on the Leahy and Belknap class guided missile cruisers? Were they a good cruiser design for the mid-Cold War era and turned out outdated in the 1980s with their conventional power? And for the Leahy, do you think the lack of main guns made them weak cruisers?
If I'm not mistaken, those were the two classes of destroyer leaders where one of their members of the class was made a nuclear cruiser. I remember doing videos about them, I think. And basically, they're destroyer leaders, and you should evaluate them as such. So when you're evaluating cruisers, we are evaluating them and their ability to actually act as an independent warship. As a destroyer leader, think of them more as the escort leader in a task group. And that's what they're designed and fitted for. And they can perform very well if they're used in that role. But the moment you give them the designation cruiser, you expect different things from them. This is half the trouble of the Ticos. They are of the destroyer leader design heritage. That's what's come through the Spruance and come through all the hull designs. And they're very good as a destroyer leader. They're not very good as a cruiser. This in many ways has forced the Arleigh Burkes to do even more stuff, which they're not very good at. And this is the problem the Americans currently have. They have no real present ship, or ship that can give them political and naval presence, beyond what we would consider an equivalent destroyer level these days. And other people are having that. And the trouble is, what that really is it's an economy system. Because you have to imagine, if you can send a cruiser, and everyone knows that's the last level before a fleet turns up, a full battle squadron, or something heavy turns up to make you really listen, that's far cheaper than sending the very heavy thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a clear signal. But the trouble is, what the Americans have is they have Burks, and the Burks have to do the constant presence thing, and then they have to be also the ones which turn up for the special occasions. And that means it's not that special, because it's just them sending a Burk. And they always send a Burk. See the problem?
Yep.
So it doesn't matter how good the Burk is. The trouble is they just have to be used too darn often because the US Congress cut too much money. Principally the strike cruiser.
Okay, so Blackburn Maximus Akagi Best Girl asks, what first-person shooter games have you played?
Most recently, one was Halo. But I think
Fleet,
I think everyone's played Halo at some point in their lives these days.
Yeah. I haven't played an FPS in a while. I'm mostly third-person shooters. Like I'm very fond of Sniper Elite. All that good stuff.
That's a good one.
Question from Henk asks, according to my sources, Z1 to Z4 were all laid down in dry dock 1 to 4 in October 34 to 7th of Jan 35. Do you by any chance have the weight and the size limitations of these dry docks?
Not off the top of my head, but I do have a book somewhere by Jürgen Rohr which is fairly decent on it.
I wouldn't have it even with a book. Like that is too specific knowledge for me. We're well outside my wheelhouse now.
Stop doing yourself down, little fleet.
Dr. Clarke, I know where my strengths are and are not. And I'm wise enough to know which is which.
Well, you'll get there.
Eventually.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll get there.
What's the next question?
Next question is... Oh, never mind, you've got it. Who cooked your food?
I think that was my sister, and this is going to sound strange, but I think that was lunch, which came really, really late, rather than dinner. But I have no idea, and I will sort it out at a certain point when I feel like eating.
Next question is from Blackburn Maximus Akagi Best Girl, which is, what if the Washington Treaty had been delayed by a year?
You have the G3s coming in. All those ships which are cancelled when they're cancelled are probably going to be further along the construction and probably won't be cancelled. You're going to have at least one G3, if not more, launched. And the moment British have launched a ship, they're not cancelling it.
They may get converted into carriers.
Not even after they've been launched, really. What you might have is two launched and completed as G3s, and two completed as G3 carriers.
That's going to annoy everyone else because no one else is that far. Well, the Japanese might. You might see the Washington Naval Treaty basically be everyone gets 2 Washington Naval Treaty ships. Mm-hmm. Like everyone gets 2 special exceptions. So the Japanese will have to pick whatever 2 of their ships they want. The Americans will get 2 Sodak 1921s. The British will get 2 G3s, and then you'll have the normal system as it is historically, which is going to piss absolutely everyone off. Because the British are going to be sat there going, "Well, we've got the 2 most powerful warships in the world by a country mile.
16.5-inch guns as well, so they're going to be fun to deal with." I think what you're more likely going to see is if the Washington Treaty's delayed a year by all that stuff, I think you're going to see various things change in the treaty, in the treaty text. You're also going to have had carriers and things come online, and things like the Courageouses, etc., might have been got rid of. Honestly, they might have gone. Mainly because the Royal Navy's already trying to get rid of them at that point. And yes, BT does save them for conversion to aircraft carriers. But that's only because the treaty suggests conversions and everyone's thinking about conversions at that point. Does he get it through? There's quite a large amount of the Navy want to build them. And so the British could actually be building the follow-on to Hermes, the scaled-up fleet carrier version of the design. At that point. I like Kallaxes. They're nice and quick to build.
Chandelord asks, a Star Destroyer the Doctor might like, the Pelion class. From these blueprints, what are your preliminary thoughts?
Okay,
It's
let's
a
have a look
wedge.
at...
It is the wedgiest wedge that ever wedged.
Yes.
That's my opinion on the matter.
It is pretty much. The thing is, it's got a nice central battery of primary guns. But again...
Turbo lasers.
Yes.
Turbo lasers.
I mean, it's got more turbo lasers, or was that the one which had the things other than turbo lasers as well?
Honestly, the Pelions are in are legends, and they're in the stage where the Galactic Empire is the good guys because and then the Sith rise up, and it's the Galactic Empire which is revolved from the Galactic Alliance. It's that weird era of Star Wars where it's so far into the future that I don't know where we are.
Are you sure it's the future, not the past? I thought Legends was the past.
Yes. No. What I mean is in terms of the time, the actual in-universe time date.
Okay.
Like the Pelion class is so like we're talking hundreds of years after the fall of the Empire and the Vuzon Vong Wars. Like we are well into the future.
So I'm guessing Luke and Leia and all that lot dead by that point.
Yeah, dead for about 150 years, if not longer than that.
Oh. Oh, with any luck, the Jedi Order by that point has realised that you shouldn't have everyone living like monks.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, doubtful. Jedi Order got so up its own. It was absurd. Started to really annoy me at a certain point because it was a case of, if you believe in all things are good, etc., and all these things, then you are doing some really strange things that make a lot of sense, but don't make a lot of sense when you take it from the logic and actually apply it to living, breathing organisms.
Yeah, the Force is a weird concept.
Yeah, basically space wizardry.
And I will continue to stand by it.
What are the fleet's favourite friendships that are not battleships? And the other thing is, what can Dr. Clarke say to make him upset about them? That question, that was of course not officially asked, but I'm just adding that on to the question.
Well, Fleet has a soft spot for... I have a soft spot for a particular set of French ironclads.
But that's battleships.
They built... No. The ironclad station vessels they built in the 1870s and 1880s.
Okay.
The ones that were built to serve overseas. Armed with the 9.4-inch guns and open barbettes.
Okay.
Really fond of those. Oh, I used to know them by name, and I can't remember now. Do I still have the... document? I do not. Damn it. I don't have the document. Oh. Anyway, there are a bunch of French sort of colonial ironclads. Not cruisers, that term isn't quite ready for maturity yet. But they are long-range, heavily armed cruisers. Yes, basically. You've basically got it in one. They see a lot of action during all the rumblings the French do around
I have a
Indochina.
feeling I know which class you're talking about, and I'm gonna have fun if it is them.
There are 2 or 3 classes of very similar ships the French build.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But I do like the French idea to basically take the ironclad concept and go global with it in a way that the British don't, because the British just go, we'll just send full-scale ironclads. We don't care.
That's because the British can afford to send full-scale ironclads. It makes life a little bit easier when you are the Royal Navy at that time, and you're producing basically 4 for everyone else's 1.
Yeah. And the thing that I do like is that the French come up with a lot of interesting solutions to the problems of trying to match the British before they basically go off the rails after the end of the Franco-Prussian War, and kind of abandon having a large navy, which does make me very sad.
The Junacol.
I don't want to talk about it.
The Junacol is fun. It's basically admitting that you've managed to screw your own pooch.
I don't want to talk about
Which I can, an expression I can use because Raleigh is no longer in the room, so won't go cross-eyed at the concept.
I don't want to talk about the effects of the Junacol on the French fleet. It'll make me upset.
I'd say it's more the effects of their infrastructure. Let's be honest, it destroys their infrastructure for about the next 3 generations.
Yes, it does.
And that alone is the reason why the ships come out like they do.
I know.
Although it does lead me to certain things when people go, oh, you can't build this ship in this size yard, and therefore this power couldn't have built this ship. And I go, look at the French. Look what they do. They just adapt.
Improvise, adapt, overcome, theoretical, practical, reboot Gilliman moment.
Yeah. Or, I was going to say, Gunnery Sergeant Highway.
That also works.
Heartbreak Ridge is, a far more obscure but far more fun reference in some regards. Will you go in?
No one take that out of context.
I'm talking to a screw.
I'm aware of that. No one take it out of context.
It's finally got in. Oh.
Again!
It's taken a lot of winding. A lot of careful strokes going into this.
You are trying to...
Oh, come on. Just a little bit more.
This man is literally leaping off the... Never mind. Alright, sure. If he wants to jump down that rabbit hole, I'm not going to stop him.
It's making me so wet from the sweat. This is the trouble with going with pneumonia.
Stop! Stop it, for God's sake! Moving on.
Done.
Knight6831 asks, if the South African Air Force's plans of 8 Handley Page Victor B2s was not related to the South African nuclear weapons program, then why try to buy them in the first place? That's really quite simple. It's a great tanker.
Also, it's South Africa.
If they can get something, they get it, especially during that particular era.
And they want the status of having the big aircraft. Let's be honest, you have those big aircraft, that gives you status in Africa.
I mean, you're talking about a government that's basically... that has all the flaws of a dictatorship without actually being one.
You say flaws of a dictatorship, I say that's the fun parts of a dictatorship. The fact that they're obsessed with buying weaponry. Let's be honest, that's one of the few things which is actually fun in a dictatorship. That if anyone's going to buy it, they will. Keep so many arms manufacturers employed around the world. There we go. Right, while I get over building that, I'm going to take a little sit down. Hello, camera. Follow me. I'm down here, camera. Thank you. Thank you, Cody85. Thank you, Drunk Headset. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your support.
Support Dr. Clarke so that he can have Kallaxes.
Support. In a second, I'm going to start opening boxes and putting books in them. I'm going to see how quickly those 4x2, those 16 cells fill up. And you're going to go, no, I know why he's buying so many.
Yeah, I support Dr. Clarke's book acquisition because I need him to continue to help me organize the MacGuffins that are recurring.
Yeah.
So I need him back in the A game.
Okay. So,
because
what if the York class
cruisers?
Basically, well, it said Dr. Clarke's F3 style 10K 1,000-ton cruisers. So they have 9 8-inch guns then in that sort of forward arrangement, like the F3 would have done. Then they would have been very interesting. 9 8-inch guns, all forwards, roughly 10,000 ton cruiser, built sort of F3 style cruiser. So scaling down the F3 design, not the Nelrod design, to a cruiser style hull. You could probably have decent armor layout if you think about it, because you've got all your guns in one spot, so you don't have to distribute the armor or the magazine coverage. It is all forward, but you can have some secondary, some 4-inch aft. You probably do have your 4-inch aft. You're probably talking a fairly decent speed vessel. So yeah, they could be useful.
Absolutely.
If you're saying getting 8 of those instead of the 2 illustrious class, that suddenly becomes a different question.
Honestly, I would definitely take like 8 of those. That's a fantastic win.
Yeah, because that's going to help you versus the Italians. It's going to help you versus the Japanese. It's going to help you everywhere.
It just gives you more cruiser. It gives you more 8-inch cruiser, and they already cannot afford to say no to more 8-inch cruiser.
It can afford to say no to Yorks versus illustrious class. It can't afford to say no to a decent cruiser versus the illustrious class. Question, Alexander. So you chose the 22 class battleships, or 20,000 St. Vincent. Just want to check. Well, honestly, if you're picking the St.
He chose Hercules.
If you're picking
Hercules.
Because if you're picking the St. Vincent's, you're basically picking Dreadnought. So, in the nicest way, you're basically picking batch 3 Dreadnought. So you pretty much got to pick Hercules. Updated Splendid Cats versus the World War II Charnels. How would it go?
Look, I love the Splendid Cats. I really do. And the Scharnhorst are not perfect. But I'm sorry to say...
Charnels probably win that one, but I would also ask why the frigate that's happening. Because why the frigate we have the Splendid Cats in any star area where they're going to be dealing the Charnels? They're far more useful elsewhere. And
also more to the point, anyone who sent the Splendid...
Yeah. Why would you send the Splendid Cats to that fight?
Because that is because Renown has her big guns to level the playing field.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say this, but a Scharnhorst armor might actually give them an ability to close down the range with a Splendid Cat.
Yeah. But
and their modern 11-inch guns will go right through the Splendid Cat's armor.
Although that could be advantageous.
Yes, that could be useful.
Because it's the whole all-nothing armor scheme, whereas their armor's going to be virtually worth nothing, so it's just going to go straight through and blow up on the other side of the ship.
I thought the Splendid Cats were distributed, weren't they?
They are distributed, but because the armor's going to be so worthless, especially at certain points, the shells will just pass straight through the ship. So they might as well have nothing.
That seems about right.
Yeah, it's a possibility, but you know. The fact is, you shouldn't be in that scenario where that happens. If you're in a scenario where that happens, someone has absolutely mucked up massively.
Yep. This is the Gunnery Officer asks, third question, can you extend the fall of the Dutch East Indies for much later than IRL? If the Prince of Wales or Repulse both survived their ordeal in 1941, how would the Japanese deal with the new capital ship threat the Abdacom Navy has now? Well, if you've got Renown and if you've got Repulse and Prince of Wales surviving, it doesn't matter if it's one of them, the other of them, or both of them. That mandates a Japanese capital ship response. It will probably be all 4 Congos, most likely, as the response. Or they might send 2 Congos and Mutsu and Nagato.
It actually mandates more than that, because think about it. If they survive, then they provide a sensible point for command to sort of centralise on. So command will centralise on, especially if Philip survives, Philip, and the ABDA command will be sent as concentrating around him. And Saratoga will probably come join his force, because, let's be honest, there's 2 capital ships. So it makes sense for the Saratoga to join up with them. And there's more than likely a British, and if they've survived the attack, etc., there were already carriers supposed to be coming our way. The Indian Ocean Fleet Eastern Fleet probably gets built on that force as well, instead of being built in the Indian Ocean, because going forward, and let's be honest, as long as they're sailing around, that's going to hold off the fall of Singapore for a bit. Because there's one thing getting the ground troops forward, there's another thing actually getting ground troops forward and that sort. So what you could end up with is a very different fall of the Dutch East Indies. It could be a lot slower, but also you could end up with a major fleet of allied British, Anglo-American, Dutch fleet formed up based on these 2 capital ships, multiple carriers from Britain and from America forming up, and you could end up with the Japanese having to send a major force down to fight it.
The problem is, though, if that, at that point, it then goes one of 2 ways. Either that force meets the Japanese and wins, or that force meets the Japanese and loses.
Mm-hmm.
If it wins, then the Japanese have been checked. If it loses, you're suddenly looking at an incredibly bad situation.
Yeah. It's fun to think about, isn't it? But it changes history just that dramatically.
And so beyond that point, you can't really go any further than that. Blackburn. The new IKB asks, greetings all. Question, Dr. Alexander Clarke. I am watching from Spain. Spent some of the day at the Catalonia Railway Museum. So that's not really a question, but it's more just hi. Nice to see you. Cool. Blackburn Maximus asks, would it be okay to eventually submit a Patreon question around the 10-10-744 happening, but no other changes to the tonnage, gun limits, etc.?
Yeah.
I assume he's talking about Washington.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, it would
Hank asks, of all the 600-ton unregulated by treaty ships, which do you consider to be the best use of the loophole? What could have been done differently by whom? How much could some stretch that 600 tons perhaps a very high freeboard? Well, the thing is, it wasn't a loophole. It was something deliberately left in to allow for the construction of sloops and gunboats, vessels that all navies need in large numbers that cannot be restricted in any way, shape or form.
In fact, it was up to 2,000 tons for the sloops, and which the sloops would fit in, and then you've got a 600-ton completely unregulated, and you've got a 2,000-ton which is... So, it's the phrasing is, they cannot be designed for a speed greater than 20 knots. Not they can't actually go for speed greater than 20 knots, they can't be designed for it. So the British got away with, in a nicest way, the British got away with, I think the boilers were all officially rated at a lower pressure than they could actually do by a long margin. And then World War II happens and, oh, we can go a lot faster! Oh, what a surprise! You know, there's the whole Tsingtao incident of January 1939, when the sloop keeps up with the town-class cruiser the whole way, speeding at top speed to get to Tsingtao in time. They literally crossed pretty much the entirety of the South China Sea, from north to south.
Somewhat impressive, actually.
And you sit there and you look at it and go, officially, you're only supposed to be able to do 18 knots. There is no way you could do that time at 18 knots.
Nope.
There is no earthly way you can do that.
What's the next question?
Hi, Steve. Steve Clarke has just joined the chat. Hi, Steve. Can you do what you did last week and keep a track of how much people are donating? Because I have lost track completely while building one.
And I unfortunately wasn't paying attention, I'm sorry to say.
Ramal, why does Dr. Clarke seem exhausted? Because I'm still getting over pneumonia, and literally, as you just saw, putting together a single Kallax 4x2 has left me actually tired. This is what I'm dealing with. Not much effort, and it's... and then I have to spend a while building up my energy. And this is it's getting better. It is getting better, but it's just so annoying.
The new IKB asks, what sort of navy could Catalonia field if they won independence in the Spanish Civil War? You're talking about coastal gunboats, perhaps a few squadrons of motor torpedo boats, maybe a large sloop for presence missions overseas, showing the flag.
Probably a
But nothing
submarine
much
knowing
more than
Catalonia.
that. Yeah, probably like maybe 2 to 4 small boats, something akin to. Even then, that's probably asking a bit much. Probably 2 small submarines, things like the Type 2s. Think things in that region.
Think
Catalonia is not a large area.
like the lovely vessel sitting in Tallinn. That sort of size submarine.
I was.
Have I thought of library-style rolling shells? Yes, I have, Constant Drowsiness. The trouble is, A, it's getting the floor to take them, B, it's the expense of them, and C, it's, let me put it this way, especially while I'm sorting everything else out in this house, Kallax is definitely the way to go, and they're probably going to be dominating it for about the next... I would reckon I'm going to be Kallax bound for at least the next 4 years until I get around to building new ones, because we're going to have so many projects here. Because once I get my stuff sorted out into a livable, habitable place, that's great, but then there's all sorts of other things to do. And we've got to build a garage. This one's going to get getting its kitchen through there, knocking through there. When I say I am, our friendly handyman is now doing it, not me. To try and get it done in the next year, because... it's probably going to take me months to get back to what I usually am. I'll probably be just about back to my normal level of fitness, and hopefully slightly better, because I've been able to go to the gym far more regularly, and have to go to the gym quite regularly down here to get back to fitness with the pneumonia. By about the time I end up hopefully going to Japan with the shipshape crew.
Michelle asks, what's the most anachronistic matchup that would be a fair fight? Example, Trireme versus an Age of Sail sloop, first rate versus first gen torpedo boat. That's a tough one. That's a really tough one, actually, that is. That's really tough, actually. I
I have an answer.
Oh?
Quinca Marine, a Roman full proper fighting ship, not trireme, Quinca Marine, and versus, and you're gonna love this, versus
Oh, please.
the Hosh.
That is
And my
not a
money's
fair
on the
fight.
Quinca
Hosh will-
Marine.
Forgive me, Dr. Clarke, but Hosh is many things, but she's not vulnerable to any of the weapons the Quincarine has.
She is.
What are you talking? What? What weaponry has the Quincarine got that can possibly damage her?
Roman Marines boarding action.
She's not going to get close enough to enable that boarding action.
She probably breaks down before she can get away.
She doesn't have to get away. Hosh's guns will destroy it. I'm not talking about the primary or secondary battery. The primary battery of mixed 10 and 13.4 inch guns. I'm talking about the secondary and tertiary battery. Quick firing guns will make mincemeat of a wooden warship.
Potentially, but also potentially, again, this is a French crew. They're sitting there looking at going, look at this vessel from antiquity! Isn't it gorgeous? Isn't it amazing? Oh, they're coming to greet us! Oh!
I do feel like you're doing... Oh, you are really not going to let me forget this, are you? Oh. Leslie, not Yonai again. Ian asks, question from the I-400 video, how good was the Aichi M6A Saren as a late war attack aircraft?
Before I answer that, I'm going to say one thing to everyone watching. If anyone is good at cartoon drawing, could you please do a cartoon drawing of some Roman Marines taking the Hoche? I just want it for T-shirts and things for fleet.
Am I gonna have to put you in touch with Sol? I'm gonna have to put you in touch with Sol. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. The man needs the work. As long as I get a free copy.
Yeah. For the HAM-6A Saren, it's actually not that bad, but honestly, one of the things you have to remember about Archie is they are a very iterative design company and very iterative manufacturers. So it's actually based on, I think it's the Jack. It's the aircraft, the previous, the earlier war aircraft.
The Jake.
And it's an evolutionary thing, and it's a good aircraft. It's a reliable aircraft.
You can see the evolution as well. You can see the evolution.
Hoche gets sunk at Actium. That would be hilarious.
Hoche would kick ass at Actium.
I think she gets sunk. How much do Hoche's secondaries to press? A night action in port facility might let the Roman ship get close enough to port.
I mean, Hoche's guns are. I think it's Hoche's secondary battery is actually in the hull. Let me just have a poke. I'm sure I've got an image here somewhere. I always keep a Hoche image on standby in case I need it. Yes, here we go. Yes, she's got a casemate battery on the upper strake of the tumble home. Below where the paint scheme changes from black to that lovely colour I like, orange. Yeah, and of course she's also got, I believe, machine guns or rotary Gatling cannon on the tops of her masts, as well as in her superstructure. So yeah, the Romans aren't going to get a chance to board.
I'm not sure.
It is going.
I still think I think the Roman Marines are fairly good troops. I think they're getting aboard.
They're good troops, but I don't. It's just the technological difference is too high.
And once they're aboard, that crew's gone.
You're talking about.
Basically, the crew of any other French battleship, I give them a chance, but Hoche's crew, no.
What is wrong with Hoche's crew? They're just French sailors.
They're the crew of Hoche.
There's nothing wrong with the crew of Hoche. You can lambast the ship all you like, but...
They're accepted being crew of Hoche.
Fleet suffers. And it's only going to get worse given what's coming in the future.
What if the Tornado was designed from the outset to be a carrier multi-role fighter and the British and French building carriers to fit them, with the Brits also just building fearless carrier-class successors? It's an invincible class to take over instead of that role for amphibious assault. You have a fairly interesting aircraft carrier design. If the Tornado to be carried is going to be basically a European version of the F-18 at that point.
Yeah, you either need full. We discussed this actually a while ago in a ramblings that we actually recorded, with Drac and Cyclic in there, and we were discussing how you'd need basically either folding tail fin Tornado or you'd need twin fin Tornado, and you could do it.
Yeah,
but you'd probably also buy F-18 as well if you're going Cadabar. You'd buy both. You'd have Tornado for naval strike, and you'd have F-18 for general purpose air superiority and fleet defense. Just because it's a simpler airframe, basically. For a
might get some E-18Gs as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're good. Hello, RG. Hello, US Montana. Jacob, CM. Hello, everyone. I know I haven't said hello as much as I normally do today. I've been kind of distracted. I was worrying I wasn't actually going to be able to complete the Kallax. You have that sounds weird again to me, because I once built literally 6 Kallaxes for a friend, like that, in an hour. just quickly assembled them and then sorted out and carried on doing all the stuff and basically building their home office in return for a Chinese takeaway. And now there's me assembling one and it's going afterwards. Yeah, that's just, it's terrible. Fourth question. What if, so this is from your typical gunnery officer, what if Saratoga wasn't so unlucky in 1942-3, and she didn't spend most of her time in dry dock repairs and could take part in Coral Sea, Midway, and most of the Guadalcanal carrier battles? Do you think she would sunk on those battles, or do you think she would survive a war like in real life? She's got a good chance of surviving. She's an extra carrier at them all, so that's going to change all those battles. If you've got an extra American carrier at Coral Sea, what are those extra reconnaissance aircraft going to spot? What are those extra strike aircraft going to hit? What's the cumulative effect of her presence and of her task group's presence? Because remember, there's going to be a destroyers with her, there's going to be cruisers with her if she's there. She's not going to be the ship on her own. If she's at Midway as well, then they've had an extra carrier at Coral Sea, they've had an extra carrier at Midway. Well, how's that going to change things? So the thing is, it's going to change a lot of the actions. So, at any one of those, she's going to have an impact. If she's at all three, my view is if they have an extra carrier at both Coral Sea and Midway, I'm not sure if Guadalcanal happens. And if there's an extra carrier at Coral Sea, there's a good chance Midway doesn't happen. Because let's be honest, an extra American carrier at Coral Sea could change things dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let Fleet have a look. Next question is from Henk. Was Kaiser 1911 also built on the same slip portion or number one slip where Gneisenau and Zeppelin were built?
I think so. Look, most of the German slips don't move that much. They are mostly being modernised in situ and expanded in situ.
The Germans have not invented the moving slipway.
Yes, but also it's usually cheaper and easier to do that. You give the bank manager less panic attacks when you say we're modernising a slipway than we're building a whole new slipway. The really interesting ones are to deal with are the British, because the British once decided to extend a slipway, and there were houses in the way, and they moved and knocked down the houses within a week. They moved the tenants and knocked out of making the decision. And this was during World War II, I want to say. They literally made a decision. This is one of the reasons, again, why when people tell me, oh, this British yard wasn't long enough to... They have the technology and capability to do this construction, but they don't have a long enough slipway. And I go, you can build a slipway. You can pour concrete one end to extend it out into the estuary and do some dredging if you have to, or you can do stuff at the other end. It's just, are you willing to pay for the effort? That's usually the question. The question is not, can we do it? The question is, are we willing to justify paying the money to do it?
That's basically the long and short of it.
That's always the argument for governments. The question is not can they do something; it's whether they want to spend the money to do it. It's like when currently, any government you have in power, they will say when it's something they don't want to do, they will not have the money for it, and they say we can't afford to do this because we don't have the money for it. But if it's something they want to do, there will never be a question of whether they have the money for it. That will never come up. And doesn't matter which hue of political ideology they are, doesn't matter who they are, which people, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is do they want to do it or not. In which case, the money will either be available or it won't be.
Next question is from Paul.
Yeah. Paul Emos.
And it's addressed to you.
I know you've spoken this before, but if you were in Henderson's shoe when first appointed as Third Sea Lord, what would you have concentrated upon, and what would you have said a hard no to? The 14-inch guns. Anyone put 14-inch guns on a battleship, I would literally have taken them out and shot them. It wouldn't be quite that bad, but I would have pushed the 15-inch gun a lot harder. What would I have said? No. What would I have pushed? HMS Unicorn, I'd have tried to push into production earlier. I'd have tried to push deck edge lifts earlier because they're considered at almost every stage of the design for Arc Royal and Illustrious class, and they're not. They don't go with them, but they do have the ideas for them. Everyone has the idea for deck edge lifts. As I said, the reason for the British being so reticent about deck edge lifts is the North Sea. I have said this before, and I will say this again, and I will say this every time, because there's always a chance someone's watching the video for the first time and hasn't heard it before. The Royal Navy in World War One, during 1 year, lost more aircraft to the North Sea, as I understand it, ripping them overboard, than they did to enemy action. In the nicest way, the enemy might be theoretically out to get them. They think they probably are. The North Sea, they know, is out to get them. So, there is a reason why the Royal Navy doesn't go for deck edge lifts. But I would have pushed that a lot further, because I think if the Illustrious class, for example, had been deck edge lifts, that would have increased their capability of aircraft. It's one of the really interesting things. Once you put in deck edge lifts into the design and start functioning it increased their capacity for aircraft by almost 12 aircraft. You can make them up to 48 capacity aircraft in their normal fit, so they could be carrying 24 TSRs and 24 fighters. And that changes things dramatically. And that's before you have a significantly smaller fighter like a Seafire. Versus a Fulmar. So basically, that's what. And I would have pushed the sloops. The sloops would definitely been pushed as well. I think I'd have pushed the Commonwealth, the Dominion sloop project, and tried to get all the Dominions building sloops. Your typical gunnery officer. Fifth question. On your Forrestal class video, do you think that if the RN had the budget, they could build a better supercarrier design than the Forrestal?
It's not a case of better or worse. It's a case of the RN building a supercarrier for the RN's needs, as opposed to the Forrestal, which is a supercarrier for America's needs. It's not a case of better or worse.
No, it is. It's always a case of it's better for their needs. So usually the classes I designed, so used to illustrate this, are the Midways versus the Maltas. Both sides bringing together their ultimate dream with war experience of having an armoured full fleet carrier. Both wanted that. But the American Midway carries slightly more aircraft, and it has its arrangement slightly different to carry more aircraft. And the Malta has slightly more armour and slightly more protection. Why? Because that's how it works. Because the British situation, geostrategic situation, includes things like the Mediterranean and the South China Sea on a regular basis, and Southeast Asia on a regular basis, etc. Areas where they know they're going to be dealing with a land-based aircraft in large numbers, and they have the experience of operating near that, as well as their own pre-war theory on operating near that, to back them up.
And you've also got the knowledge that
the Americans have the oceans of the Pacific and Atlantic, so they go, well, we've got the freedom of manoeuvre to avoid land-based aircraft when we want to.
And of course, you've also got the whole idea that the RN is aware that it's looking towards the post-war period. It's looking towards a future fleet. It knows it's not going to have as many escorts as it has currently, but it still wants a large. Yeah, this is why you see the Maltas balloon in size to get the benefits of an armored carrier with the benefits of a large carrier.
What are you looking for?
Harness.
Huh?
Harness.
It's in Mum's office. Mum's bedroom.
Did you do that?
Sustenance.
You haven't eaten
Huh?
what I've produced for you.
Huh?
And you haven't eaten it.
I'm eating it slowly. I'm also talking to people. I'm eating it. It's very nice, thank you. It's been very crispy bacon. They've probably all heard it crispy.
Yeah,
Yes, we did. We heard it. Can confirm.
Slight interruptions.
Don't worry. Take care, sis. Thank you. Yes, this was cooked by my sister, and it's very nice. And
Yeah. Blackburn Maximus asks, did the Second London Naval Treaty do away with the cumulative limits for the capital ships? I don't know. I'll have to wait for Dr. Clarke to finish his conversation before...
the Second London Naval Treaty did do away with the cumulative limits, so you could build as many as you liked. So basically, this is where my question of, well, what do you think happens in a world where... I think I asked this at the end of a video recently. Hello.
Bacon tax.
Bacon tax? Is he allowed bacon?
No.
Sorry, there is a corgi has joined me. Hello. I'm worried about getting close to you with bacon in my hands. I'm worried I'm going to lose the fingers. He's very happy now. And my toes are still intact as are my fingers. You have no... You interested in the bacon tax? He's not going anywhere now. That is the most reluctant to move corgi you will ever see. He is gripping. He is literally holding onto the door frame.
I have to move, actually.
He does not want to move. He has seen the light.
He's seen bacon.
Or the...
Oh.
The light just happens to be bacon.
The light is permanently bacon as far as the corgi's concerned. Okay. The second London, this is why the Second London Naval Treaty, it does away with cumulative limits, and this is why I was asked the question of what happens if they do that for the First London Naval Treaty. If they put in all the framework they do with the First London Naval Treaty, but also do away with the cumulative limits. Imagine what it's like, because what the British have built by 1939. What will the Americans have built by 1939?
Yeah.
Basically, if you do that, if you take it back in time and you do that, then that changes the naval story for World War II dramatically.
Just a bit.
Because also, in the nicest way, you're going to build a 27,000-ton carrier. And the British 27,000-ton carrier is an Ark Royal-like ship in terms of its strike air group and its air group with the illustrious class armour.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, good luck and God bless.
Yeah. I've been waiting for this question.
Mm-hmm.
Random stupid question from C.A. McDivitt. Assume that Hitler and Stalin both get invited to the Second London Naval Conference. Things break down bad enough that it comes to blows at the treaty table. Who wins the fist fight? Who gets injured? Well, first of all, it's Joseph Stalin. The man literally built like a brick excrement house. Versus a gentleman who is on so much meth it's not even funny. On the one hand, you've got the fury of a person who used to be a peasant and is still in fairly decent shape and has a mustache so large you can use it as a defensive measure, versus a man with barely any mustache but the wild fury of a meth addict.
Also, think about the rest of the politicians there at that table getting involved in the fight. Someone has got to take a pick on Mussolini.
Il Duce is probably sat there just going, the beep with the puff, and I don't know what I'm doing.
And let's be honest, I can't remember which of the French presidents it is at the time, or French prime ministers, and then there's the British one at the time. I think it was it Baldwin? I think it was Baldwin.
If it's Second London, it will be Baldwin, yeah.
Yeah, it's Baldwin. And the American president at the time is Roosevelt, isn't it?
Roosevelt's not getting involved. He's sat there going, I'd love to get involved, but I can't.
No, he's probably hitting people with his cane. He's probably got a Secret Service agent wheeling him, and he's whacking him with his cane from his chair. Good lord. 96831 asks, question 222. So why did the Italians not use the 1923 preliminary 10,000-ton Trento design, which was treaty compliant? That's really simple. The Italians realised they didn't have to comply with the treaties, so they didn't. Yes, they realised that, like everyone else did, they could comply with the treaties in theory, not in reality. Everyone breaks the treaties. Whether it's water as armour, or the British actually don't break the treaties, they just break the spirit of the treaties by writing the treaties in such a way they can get round them. The Americans have the Lexington-class carriers, which
are interesting.
They are so overweight, it's beyond belief. And then the Italians just go, well, we can get away with it as well. And everyone knows that everyone else is breaking the treaties. Everyone is good naval architects who are looking at it going, yeah. It's like the only people who believe Nelson Rodney's top speed are modern people who read the official stats. No one in the 1920s and 30s believed the Royal Navy was making capital ships that slow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear a corgi woofing? Can you hear?
Yes, I heard a woof.
Would I be in a total non-starter to re-engine the Swordfish with the lighter, more powerful Mercury or Perseus, and thus increase the lift capacity of the airframe somewhat, again to try and stabilize? It's not impossible, but it's going to require a change in the airframe design, and that's going to slow down construction.
And it also uses engines that are not as easy. It also uses engines that aren't as easily available. Because remember, one of the reasons the Swordfish was re-engined was to increase availability of power plant.
Yeah.
They knew it wasn't the engine they wanted.
No. John Hagson, you've got to remember, Roosevelt's doctor said he had the upper body of a heavyweight boxing champion. Yeah.
I mean, if Stalin hits you, you go down and you stay down. It is the only thing I will agree that a dictator is actually butch, because Stalin was.
On 8th of September 1939, a Royal Marine Artillery Sergeant exits his shed with an exact copy of the US Navy's 5-inch Hyvar.
High velocity air rocket, I think.
Yeah.
The Royal Navy... The Fleet Air Arm now has rockets.
Let's see exactly what they are getting. Yeah, it was the one I think named Holy Moses. Yeah, if the Royal Navy, if the Fleet Air Arm gets that in 1939, the Fleet Air Arm is going to be known as Death from Above for about the first 2 years of World War II. I don't think anyone's going to bother with dive bombing at that point. From the British perspective. But that could actually...
What's the point?
Yeah, from the British perspective, that's going to cause quite a lot of pain to people. But honestly, yeah, that's going to take out quite a lot of cruiser upper works. The Corgi is friendly right up until you decide to try and deny him bacon. This is why my sister should not have suggested giving him bacon tax. The moment he has the taste of it, he goes, that's my bacon now. I would probably wake up in the middle of the night with a Corgi standing over me going, where's my bacon? Comprehensive modernization of the Queen Elizabeth class and Renown class in the 30s, if using the same small tube boilers as simplified logistics, could have been viable to get the Queen Elizabeth class up to 26-27 knots without being totally mental on cost rebuild. Yeah. It's possible. Let's be honest. One of the reasons why they actually make the decision when they're doing Warspite to save weight on boilers by giving her enough power to get the existing speed and a little bit more, but not using the weight for more boilers, to use that space, to that weight instead for more subdivision armor and to improve the dual purpose AA weapon fit. So the thing is, the weight's there. It's just you're going to make compromises elsewhere underneath the treaty limits.
Blackburn Maximus asks, if the Italians had built a pair of aircraft carriers prior to World War II, would the Air Ministry have been forced to allow the Fleet Air Arm to build better aircraft for Royal Navy carriers? The Fleet Air Arm already had peer competitors in the form of the United States Navy and the Japanese Empire, and the Air Ministry still didn't allow them to build better aircraft. What makes you think the Italians having a pair of aircraft carriers is going to somehow convince the Air Ministry to change their mind?
The question is, will they still justify shutting down the Seafire program in 1939? And the answer is probably no. Because you have to remember, the Italians sit across the Mediterranean. And they're a strategic level threat. You can talk about you can talk the Japanese down. The Americans, whilst both Britain and America likes to do paper games against the other, it's more a case of they're the largest largest navy in the world. You do the paper game because they're the biggest threat. They're the one which is going to be most complicated to have to take on. You don't do a paper game against a smaller power. It's just going to make your life too easy. But when they're actually doing their war games and their war exercises, the British are fighting the Italians and they're fighting the Japanese. That's who they're practicing their war fighting and exercises against. That's who they're modelling their fleets around. And with the Americans, it's literally just the Japanese. Pretty much every single exercise from about 1928 onwards, you can literally look at the enemy and go, yes, you're pretending to be a portion of the Japanese fleet. A portion of the Japanese fleet attacking the Panama Canal, a portion of the Japanese fleet attacking this. You just look at them, and, it's fun. But yeah, so I think if the Italians have an air, but I think also the thing you also have to consider is what will if the Italians have been building those aircraft carriers in the nicest way, British carrier program would have been far more advanced as well in response to it because of the British watching it, and there would have been other impacts as well on the British carrier program and the British system. So the thing is, it would have been those carriers are not going to appear. So if they would have had to be started production built to be prior to 1939, they've got to be 1936 built at least at latest, if not 1935. In which case, they're going to be part of the thing that the Royal Navy's factored into for quite a while.
Makes sense to me.
Question 10. If the Nelson class had been built to the full 35,000 ton standard, but Nefri style fun layout with 60-inch guns, how could this affect future battleship and cruiser designs if they are in other nations? And how does it affect World War II? If they're 28 knot, 9 16-inch gun ships with 35,000 ton standard, then they're the world's first true fast battleships, and they're going to scare the bejesus out of everyone. They were bad enough as they were. They were dangerous enough as they were. If they are admitted to be 28 knot designs, then frankly that's changed the entry point, and that's also going to change quite a lot of the metrics for World War II, because now Britain has 2 fast battleships, as well as its 3 battle cruisers, as its 5 fast ships. So it's going to change the metrics for the French when they're calculating, if we build fast ships, that's going to be the most useful to our alliance with Britain, because it's the most useful thing for Britain, because that's the thing they're short of. It's also going to change some of your approach on the King George V's, because you've got 9-gun ships already, which are going to be 28-knot ships. So if you're building more 28-knot ships, do you build a follow-on design which looks similar, so they work in profile together? That's going to be a question. So it's going to have a lot of impact long term. But it also means they're going to basically be the biggest, meanest looking ships for most of the 1920s and 30s. And whilst Hood is still going to be bigger and Hood's still going to be the fleet flagship, her position is going to be even less secure and less prominent than it was historically.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you want to put a guess at the question? This question?
I will. I'll have a guess. Dr. Clarke.
You think I'm the older one? Wrong. I'm the baby of Shipshape.
Really?
I'm the youngest.
Ah, not anymore.
No, I'm not anymore because we've expanded our membership. But of the original 4 members, I'm the baby.
Yes. Now I am the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
It still feels weird that I am actually part of this whole thing.
Sixth
It all
question.
happened so suddenly.
It's fun. You're good. Sixth question, Dr. Clarke. Are you going to travel to the US to visit various museums and museum ships any time in the future, since Dracula's been in the US often lately? Yes, actually, that's part of the Historiathon. Part of my ideas for fundraising behind the Historiathon is to fundraise for a trip to the States, to go and see the Midway and possibly a few other vessels out there. And that's what I'm basically fundraising for. I'm fundraising for sort of a personal trip of mine to the States to go and see the things out there. I would love to go to America. Now I'm based in the Southwest, and sort of I've changed my timetable and my work schedule. It's actually easier for me to get the time to do so, but it's now going to be a case of getting the funding to do so and putting together the money to do so. And one of the things Drac has advantages over me in that sense is he's that much further along in his YouTube program, he's that much further along in his Patreon program, he's that much further along in understanding how the fundraising goes, how to work and get sponsored videos and all those things. And so I'm sort of learning as much as I can from him and Gareth the Brit, and we're trying to make it better. And you might have noticed that I'm slowly shifting, that I'm actually doing more time a week on YouTube. My plan had been, once I moved down here, to move YouTube from basically being 2 days a week allocated time. So roughly I was allocating 24 hours cumulatively a week to YouTube, to allocating somewhere in the region of 36 hours a week to YouTube, to try and spend more time and more research, refine it more, do better, more for it, because I find it really fun. And I find it a lot of interesting work to do with the stuff and to talk to people and to talk with the history. And yeah, it's fun. But it's a case of it's allocating the time, and yeah, I want to go. It's also a case of, especially at the moment, one of the things I have realised is if I do a trip to America, etc., or something like that, I have to take a buddy with me. Because you need a second person if you're going to get... I know Drac likes to do it solo and does some... he's very brave, he's very good, he does it solo, but I think I do worry about him, though, when he does it, because he does get into issues, he does talk about some of the problems he's had, and there is the factor that when we... one of the reasons why Shipshape came about as a group was because there's these places and these things we wanted to go see and do, and we wanted to make it safer. Because if you go and travel there solo, you have no support network other than the people who you sort of have arranged to meet in country. And you need to bring a bit of a support network with you to be able to properly deliver. It's like when Drac was ill in Australia at various points, or even on this trip when he was unwell, we were that someone else would go get food and make sure he was okay. And sort of the same with me when I was unwell in Australia. Basically, I had... What was it? I'm not sure what it was. I think it was... I think I managed to eat a dodgy burger, but I'm not 100% sure. But I had a dodgy tummy. And I was fresh out of the necessary little pills when one has a dodgy tummy. And Master Dan, Dr. Dan, went off, got them from a local pharmacy, and dropped them off at my hotel room. And I managed to join them on their wandering around a few hours later, and went, "Hello, I'm here." And we had a fun time.
Hey, hooray for Dr. Dan.
I will say half the time with the person getting ill is usually Dr. Dan himself. I mean, he comes with us as our doctor, but he is also the one we have to nurse the most often. Because he manages to bash himself up quite so regularly. It's really funny, because if you look at the two of us, I am, especially at the moment, slightly more rotund than him. I am getting better. My weight is dropping down considerably. I'm starting to realise quite on how do I put this, cumulatively unwell, sort of dealing with all the stress of the move and everything, organising everything, had been making me by how much better I'm feeling now we've actually moved. And getting back to some sort of fitness regime, although I can't get anything that much done with current recovery. But, you know, the funny thing is, we'll be walking through an engine room, and I will go through, and I'll be completely fine, and Dr. Dan will follow me along. Bang! Out! Drop! Look back. And there he is, somehow he's sort of caught in a pose. And then he gets himself free and carries on, because he's a super trooper. But you sit there and go, how the frick did he happen? And it's like, there was the destroyer we visited in Sweden, in Gothenburg, Småland. He lost, I think it was his glasses he left behind, his sunglasses, in the engine room. And they dropped off him. And he had to go back and find them. And had to be taken back by the guide to go hunting them for them. And
oh my God.
But he is so good. And he's so kind and so helpful. And, you know, it's like, we all do things. With me, my thing, and because I've talked about Dan's and Drax, actually, really, the only one who's cool and managed to get away with all sorts of stuff is Garius. You've never seen a more suave gentleman getting through the world than him. But, you know, with me, I have a tendency to walk places. And I have a tendency to forget not how much time it takes me to walk them, but that I will stop, take photos, and be interested in a piece of history along the way. So, I am usually, if I have decided to walk to the destination, I don't think there has been a single time, I've never been late, but I don't think there's been a single time I haven't arrived at a run. Because I've realised the time and gone, I need to get there quickly.
Oh dear. Well, there's one thing I am, is very, very punctual, so don't worry, I'll keep you all on time.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
In
we should probably
1960
move on. And do you want to put a pin in questions, because we are quite behind.
Yeah, let's put a pin in questions for a moment, and if we manage to get further, we'll open them up again. Because, yeah, we're behind.
Take it away, Dr. Clarke.
1916, Arians had a design for the F3. What did they do with it? Build it.
Yeah, pretty much.
If they got that in 1916, welcome to the battle class, the hoods. I mean, the admiral class, and they probably get those all get built quite quickly, and yeah. If you got that design and the notes behind it, you build it.
Yep.
But that then changes history quite dramatically.
Just a bit.
Referring back to the
Molly Madison.
Molly Madison, referring back to the illustrious versus ruler class question, how many ruler class ships will you need for you to take them instead of the 2 illustrious class?
20. If you're going to give me escort carriers, I need that many of them.
You're not
to make
wrong.
It worth giving up, to make it worth giving up 2 full-sized armored carriers.
Mm-hmm. But let me explain the reason, because there are going to be some long-term advantages. If you've got those in service prior to World War II, you're able to. They're going to be used instead of Argus. Argus is going to be gone completely immediately straight away. B. They're going to be used for the anti-submarine warfare duties rather than the fleet carriers, so that's going to save them from doing that sort of mission. So you might not lose Courageous earlier on, which makes it unlikely you lose Glorious because they're operating as a pair. And if they're operating as a pair, there's going to be a rear admiral there who's going to look at a certain captain and go, "Why no aircraft airborne?" Also means you end up likely with another fleet carrier available available in Mediterranean Fleet, which means you probably end up with 3 fleet carriers at Taranto because Eagle's probably left at home to be maintained instead of being needed to go out with her because you've got 3 carriers, you can afford to leave 1 at home. When you've got 2, you can't afford to leave 1 at home. So instead of them pushing
and
their
the U-boat
and so you're going to have 3 carriers at Taranto. Also, the U-boat campaign is going to be
in its crib.
It's pretty much because if you consider the core of U-boats they have 1939, 1940, and it's those crews which grow the fleet in 1941 and are really essential. There are going to be so many of them killed off by the escort carriers.
And you might say, where do you get the planes? We have Swordfishers and other biplane and aircraft available. Like, it doesn't have to be Swordfish. We can get Sharks. We can get the previous generations of biplane.
There are
aircraft available. Well, we have the technology. As they say.
Yep.
What's next?
Right.
I'm leaving this one to you, mate. I'm leaving this one to you.
If the James MDF somehow could convert the Zumo class DDH as a carrier by adding either ski jump or catapult and send the flight deck to the side more, you think the Zumo CV could be better than the Queen Elizabeth class? No. It could be more useful as its own carrier, but the scale we're talking about, the difference in size between those 2 ships, is dramatic. It is dramatic. Now, the interesting thing is that Japanese are having very close conversations with the Royal Navy right now, and if they do go the carrier route, I could see them going the F-35B carrier route in terms of the next generation of ships, and they've been taking a long look at the Queen Elizabeth class, and that could be a very interesting turn up the books if you could get basically the Japanese take on the Queen Elizabeth class ideas. But it'll be interesting. Steve Richards, Johnny Walker and Starling versus I-400. Oh, Starling wins every time.
You're putting experienced escorts against one of the least maneuverable submarines underwater in the world. It's only going to go one way.
Yeah. The moment they actually are in a situation where they know where they are, they're gone. The I-400's only chance is going to be a void being found. Team Locker, does Fu like the French ships in AL?
Never played Azure Lane, don't plan to. Just not my cup of tea. So no idea what they look like.
If the original Hagara 6 crew, diesel-powered, even larger amount of proposal was built instead of the originals, would the 30-knot top speed and massive range have made them any better? Yes! It would also made them an absolute nightmare for anyone to deal with, because that would have meant they could have kept up with the battle fleet. Which means you actually change things like...
The carriers, you mean?
They can keep up the carriers, but they can also... I said the battle fleet, but basically they can keep up with the
Congos.
With
the Congos,
the Congos and the first aviation fleet, the Kido Butai.
Yep.
So suddenly you have the Congos and those as part of the Kido Butai, let's say at Pearl Harbor. Well, the nicest way, if you've got those 2 ships there, you're not going to worry so much about American battleship sorting, any battleship sorting, because you know you're going to hit quite a lot of them in port, but also anything that does sorting is not going to be able to fight those 2. At that point,
Yep.
you have just made a ship which is going to scare the bejesus out of everyone. If they're going to turn up in a lot more battles, especially with 30 knot speed, that means they can withdraw faster, they can move forward faster, they're going to keep up the Congos. Again, you could end up with, let's say, Musashi sitting with the two. When Washington originally does so well at night, she might find herself versus the Yamato class. And that's a different scenario. She still could win it. Don't get me wrong, at those ranges, she could still win it. But there's also a chance that they end up in mutual destruction. 96831. Also, there's the fact that if they are diesel, that could then push other ideas to go diesel. And I think diesel for the Japanese is a slightly easier fuel for them to get hold of. Not much easier, but slightly easier. 96831. Follow up to question 220. Assuming a refit hood did take Vanguard's place, or Vanguard, the 84 40mm pom-pom has what... did take place of Vanguard. Of the 84 40mm pom-pom, 12 40mm Bofors, and 34 20mm Oricon that hood has, what would get changed? Probably not much. Probably you pretty much have that fit. Because that fit makes sense. Question. Do 24 4.5-inch guns, 84 40mm 2-pounders in 6 octuple and 9 quadruple mounts, 12 single 40mm Bofors and 34 20mm Oerlikon in 8 twin and 18 singles sound like what the Iron would have had on a late war hood? Look, you're going to fit as much as you can. So honestly, the question you should be asking yourself is how much top weight and armor are you adding into a refit hood? How much structural work are you having to redoing? How much weight are you putting in the engines? How that's going to affect your top weight and your metacentric height? Because the thing is, if your engines don't weigh enough and don't displace enough, and you want to put stuff high up, it's going to make you wobbly as a ship. So you have to work it out, basically. So those fits both work, but the reality is that's going to be quite a long way down the list of things they're going to work out when they're refitting hood. Runon, what would you do with a drunken sailor early in the morning?
Toss him in the brig until he cools off, then reprimand him.
Don't put him in the same hammock as the captain's daughter. That's really not a good idea. The song might go that distance, but that's not a good idea for that person's life expectancy. Senecnerium,
yeah.
What would the mindset of a what would the mindset be to build a frigate that would be the equivalent of a double Razé first rate? Double Razé first rate.
You don't really build ships like that. Because you can't. The reason that the Razé works is that you only go to the effort to build a first-rate style hull with first-rate style rigging and first-rate style armament if you're building a first-rate. Or a ship of the line, I should say, just generally. It doesn't work for frigates. If you want to build a strong frigate, you follow a different line of thinking, which we see the Americans do. It gives them strong frigates, but it's a different line of thinking entirely to building a ship of the line. You'd basically have to build a ship of the line that's a first rate, then Razé it down, which would make everyone go, "What the frigate are you doing?"
Yeah.
And there'd probably be very angry noises asked in Parliament.
Yes, often regularly very angry noises. I've just realised I can repost posts about me on YouTube. Just asked me if I wanted to do that, and I went, "What? Someone made a post about me, and I can repost it." Okay, I'll do that.
Someone made a post about you. What did they say?
It was my TV agency basically saying I'm in a Channel 5 program. Sunken Warship Secrets from the Deep.
Oh, yeah, very nice.
It's me and Kate Jameson are both in there.
Hey!
It's from Squeaky Pedal Productions.
Nice!
It's nice. It's a good one. Okay, so. I think I've answered that one by night, the first one, and question 221 was the 24 4.5 inches scope 48 40mm 2 Panama Mark 6 pom-poms. Plan for hood, the idea for hay and peacetime, yes. Run on. Question, if you could emplace any main gun turret in your yard, fully functional, without regard for logistical engineering constraints, which turret and why? Which turret and why? I'm thinking I want to mark an 8-inch autoloader, so I can control it myself without need for a crew, or rather that many people, and that would allow me to dominate my neighborhood.
I want a 20mm Sea-Wiz turret.
No, I want the 8-inch auto.
You can have the 8-inch auto. I want the Sea-Wiz turret.
Okay. But the trouble with the Sea-Wiz turret is it will start auto-tracking things like aircraft flying over your head.
I know. That's the point.
You want to take down the 747s?
Yes! Commit violence.
Don't worry about you. Montana 687. Question: would it be possible to completely rebuild HMS Unicorn to be longer and be capable to launch and land jet aircraft? Yes, but it would also be very expensive. So the answer is yes, you can cut it down the middle and add a section in the middle. It's going to be very expensive. If at the start of the 20s, the Iron had 3E, 12D, 28C, 7 refusers and 14 town, plus 1 CNE, 2 NZN, 1 Canadian E, 2 New Zealand D, 4 RAN, and 1 New Zealand town. What effect does this have besides any obvious ones? It gives the Royal Navy access to a lot of cruisers. It gives the Royal Navy a lot of cruiser presence around the world. So basically, it's going to change some of the treaty terms, and it's going to change a whole lot of presence missions. It's also going to mean they're starting from a larger number to work with. And you've got those fleets out of a slightly larger vessel to work with. So if you're starting the 20s with that, then you're working quite a decent work to go from. You've also got a lot more E's in service, because historically they had 2, and you've now got 4, so you've basically doubled numbers, and again, with the D's and those things, you sort of you've increased them all dramatically.
Uh-huh.
Galvin Gosberg, Legion, question, Legion taking the Hosh. The whole Hosh?
Yes.
Oh.
You can't have the whole Hosh. You can't handle the truth.
I think the Stokers would be interesting. Maybe the tough ones. They're the only ones who really trained for close quarter combat. Having to move coal and shovel coal all day. They are your main defence against the Roman infantry once they get aboard your ship. Because let's be honest, there is nowhere on Hosh which is long enough for your riflemen to actually be able to use their rifles as rifles. They're going to be using them as pointy spears. And of spear drill, with their bayonets and pointy spears, pointy sticks and clubs, and that gives the Roman infantry an advantage. Hank, if Germany was using the appropriate 52,600 ton left over for light cruisers, the Anglo-German Naval Agreement to build torpedo boat carrier cruiser, how small could you design it and keep minimum 2 boats aboard and still have good enough small light cruiser? Oh! You got 52,600 tons? I'm reckoning you could get decent, 10 decent on 5,260 tons each. You could easily get at the good 10 ships, which could carry that. They'd be basically modified air fusers, and they'd be short-range cruisers, but they'd be perfect for Baltic and North Sea work.
Yes.
And if you're prepared to fill them up with your merchant vessels, they could even be used as surface raiders. There are people asking why not Agincourt's turret, so I could actually answer the question of whether she had 18-inch guns or 15-inch guns. There is a very simple reason for Agincourt's turret. There's only so much space in my garden. Look up the size of a battleship turret, then look up the size of most gardens. Even my very large garden would struggle to fit it.
That's what I want to see, was I can just about fit it in my... garden.
Mm-hmm. Per Drac video, why did the Marine Nationale not give plans to their shipyards and only give broad requirements for their Sovereign Star battleships? Politics is the short answer, but I'll let the French ship-loving fleet give the full answer.
Basically, because they'd basically forgotten what had happened and the hard-won lessons that they'd learned about what happens when you let ship designers just, basically what happens when you just give people a spec rather than actual, like a rough idea rather than detailed specification. The French had learned this lesson the hard way during the wooden steam warship period and the ironclad period. But then it turns out when you stop building capital ships for a bit, it's forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah. They basically just forgot one of the fundamental pillars of warship construction. You see, but it is worth pointing out they only make this mistake once. With the Charles Martel class. And her 5 half-sisters. It is not repeated.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm fairly certain. Because everything else after them can actually be recognised as classes of ships.
Well, they are certainly closer in definitions as a class of ships.
Yeah, but the Charles Martel is the real, oh boy, we dropped a clanger moment.
Yes. Question: would subchasers be a good ship to start my navy with while I slowly build up my RP country?
Let me have a look. If you're starting from scratch with no naval industry at all, no naval tradition at all, yeah, you want to start with a say
something small.
4 to 8 subchasers, and you want to buy something bigger, a one-off purchase of something bigger that carries as many of the guns as possible that you want to work into your fleet in terms of caliber, type of turret, etc. to run crews through that ship and do training cruises all of the time.
Yeah. Basically, you need something which can be the flagship and also be the training ship.
Yeah, you need something that can go out onto the high seas and actually go and give people experience of being at sea. Because that is a very important thing to have, to give that experience of being at sea.
Leslie Mitchell, my dream house is a 40 meter by 12 meter space width side. That's just about big enough for a battleship gun. So 1 Kallax funded. $63 US. Thank you.
Hey!
Thank you. So, Captain, what would happen if Siberian Sea, if at Siberian, the sea, the air attacks are replaced with a flight of 1,200 heavy bombers? Flying at medium altitude instead of high altitude, and with 2,000 pounds bomb armor-piercing bombs. Pardon me for that, a little bit. Flying at medium altitude instead of high altitude. If at Siberian Sea, the air attacks are replaced with a flight of 1,200 heavy bombers, flying at medium altitude instead of high altitude, and dropping to... It's still, heavy bombers are not going to be that maneuverable, so they're going to be dropping in a line, so honestly that's going to probably reduce the likelihood of their attacks actually hitting. The thing is, you want to be... If you've got that many heavy bombers, they are going to be carpet bombing an area, but the odds are they won't hit the ships. As the ships will scatter and moving around and be blowing up, but also be manoeuvring to avoid the bombs being dropped in the sticks of bombs. And the thing is, when a heavy bomber doesn't actually just drop its bomb, boom, 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 it drops a stick. So they can actually end up landing quite close. So,
yes, indeed they can.
The thing is, that's a lot of bombers, but that's wasting a lot. You're putting a lot of explosive into the water for not much effect.
That's about the long and short of it.
How much effort would it be for DWK to lay down a pair of Deutschwerk to lay down a pair of 25,000-ton ships in, let's say, 1936, and they are not building Mazan Blucher? Presuming you could
Wait
start
a minute. 25,000 ton. Oh no. No. I refuse. No. I absolutely categorically refuse. You'll see. Please answer the question, Dr. Clarke. You'll see why in a second.
Why?
Because those specs line up with a pair of ships from that hated abomination.
I'm sure Henk would not produce such a things. Could a diesel Junkers engine make sense for Panzerschiff or H-39 seaplane? Henk is far too nice a person to go for Drake's drum. Far too nice a person. But, yeah, they probably could. It would take a little bit of effort. It would, but they could probably do that. One trouble is, if they're laying down something which is 25,000 tons, a lot of people are going to be looking at going, what the frigate are they building? And if it's 1936, especially, that's pre the 1937 London Naval Treaty, that's going to affect the approach of the British to the King George V. It's going to affect the approach of the Americans to their capital ships. It's going to affect a lot of the French approach to their capital ships. So it's going to have impact. Question: what happens if you give Jellicoe Neptune's Trident for Jutland? The German fleet gets destroyed. That's the very easy answer, because Jellicoe would use it. Cody D, if you have to build a planetary defense force for a Star Wars planet, what would that look like, assuming it's moderately populated and built up?
Oh my god, I wasn't actually wrong.
What?
Never mind, let's talk Star Wars.
You're trying to look for more Hank questions? No,
it's fine. I've found what I needed. I found what I needed to find. But yes, so planetary defense force, Star Wars, single planet, moderately populated and built up. Okay, so we have to buy commercial, so we can't buy Imperial ship designs. If it's during the Galactic Civil War and the Imperial period, I can probably buy, let's say, a quartet of Venators. You know, like buy a quartet of Venators as your capital ships, because that'll deal with most anything that isn't a Imperial fleet. Buy yourself. Don't buy dreadnoughts, because those things are crew hungry in the extreme. You probably want to buy Corellian corvettes, because, well, they're Corellian corvettes. Basically, just go to Corellia, look up all their corvettes and frigates, and just point to all the things and go, yes, I'll take 4 of each.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd add...
And then you've got the Venators.
I'd want a lot of fighters based planet side as well as on the Ventus,
Yeah.
and I'd basically every moon, every asteroid I could establish a base on, I would.
Just buy Z95 headhunters and just standardize on Z95 headhunters because they carry a single proton torpedo tube. They're fairly decent starfighters. Just buy headhunters, and they're fairly cheap as well.
Might as well. Just basically just fill the sky with just fill the entire sky with fighters and mines.
Yeah.
Runan, I just wanted you to know that, you know, the chat started a list of ways that Jellicoe would use to try to kill BT.
Oh god.
Jellicoe probably wouldn't do that until after the battle was over. But he can part the sea first, so in the nicest way, the odds are with that trident, first things first, he's going to stick the German fleet on the seabed, and then he's going to let the sea come back.
Yeah, but you do realise that if he just makes the sea go away beneath them, the crews are not going to survive the fall, nor are the ships.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be crumpled heaps at the bottom of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where Jellicoe would not enjoy doing it. I mean, not something he'd take pleasure in. But he'd do it in a heartbeat, because it would mean he wouldn't have to do the same thing. He wouldn't risk any British ships being lost. And it's one of those things about commanders. They are, and sailors, and sort of as a rule, they don't. You know, the good ones do not relish the idea of killing their enemy, but they absolutely abhor the idea of writing letters home. To say so and so was lost. I do apologise for your loss. They fought bravely. Those letters are actually absolutely despised. They do them. Honour demands it. Their own personal feelings demand they write them. But they would gladly never write a single one. And they will do anything within their power that they can legally do to not have to write those letters. And Jellicoe was focused. Basically every... I think he sent messages to every person he knew or directly commanded family who died who had directly commanded family who died at Jutland or in any battle under his command. He sent letters to their family. I seem to remember that story being told about him. And it doesn't surprise me. But Beatty was the same. Beatty also wrote those letters. So there are a few things I will give Beatty. But as a political admiral and as a commanding officer in that scenario, he was good. And as we all know, I am not keen on giving him any credit at all. Scuttlebutt 5 looks like it's going to be weird. In a post-Commonwealthization world, how much support would the UK give to the new Commonwealth to support naval infrastructure? If it had followed through as plans in the pre-World War II sort of plans of how to turn the Empire through the Dominionization process to Commonwealth, probably a lot, but it's going to be hard baked into the whole concept of Commonwealth. IGN, question one, Steve IGN lays down and built 8 Ryujos to its original design, i.e. with a single hangar act in the late 1920s. What is the reaction of the 4 other signatories to the Washington Naval Treaty? Let me just check. So, if they had laid down 10 of them, Oh, 8. You've put. Well, they closed they closed the treaty in 1930. So if they managed to build 8 of 8,000, roughly 8,000 tons before the Naval Treaty, then you have a scenario where if you close the treaty terms, Japan's not going to accept the treaty terms being closed in such a way that forces them to get rid of carriers. And 80,000 tons of carriers is more than they're allocated. Or rather, it's going to force them to lose carriers. So you either have to increase the carrier tonnage that everyone's allowed, in which case you retroactively increase the Japanese carrier tonnage, or you're going to have to add a new carrier of light carrier where the Japanese are allowed these.
And if none of the above happens, Japan will walk.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say what you see likely is actually the cumulative limits get dropped. The late 1930s compromise. They might even
which means people will start building again.
Yeah. And so Japan will find themselves with a whole load of light carriers when Britain and America are building themselves full-size fleet carriers of 27,000 tons going, hello!
It's basically, congratulations, we won. Did we win?
Yeah, it's going to be painful whatever happens. But also the most people who are going to suffer the most pain are probably going to be... Well, let's be honest, if anything happens where the 1930 London Naval Treaty turns into the 1936 London Naval Treaty, 36-37 Treaty with no cumulative limits, then...
Germany's just... the Kriegsmarine is no threat.
But let's be honest, Hitler doesn't come to power for a good few years here at that point. It's just not going to... It's not going to be a fun scenario for them.
You might see the German Navy go with the coast defense ships rather than commerce raiding cruisers, because they can't get anything on 10,000 tons that's going to be powerful enough or fast enough to be worth going for the commerce raiding large cruiser as an option.
True.
And if the and if you're looking at fighting the Russians, regardless of what German government's in power, you need something, therefore, if you're not going to build a commerce raiding cruiser, you want something that's going to basically look at the gangets and go, I'm not scared of you.
Yes, but also, you have to think about it. If that's the scenario you have in the world in 1930, then you also have someone else who who is also a dictator, and has a big ego which needs to look big on the world stage, who's also going to start investing in stuff.
The problem, if Stalin tries, he's going to have problems. Well, more problems.
Yeah. But the thing is, that doesn't mean he's not going to do it.
I mean, I suppose if he starts up his programs of naval construction early, we might actually have mature or semi-mature Russian shipbuilding by 1936, which might mean that when Stalin really kicks it into high gear, he might actually have the industry to not maybe give him what he wants, but give him part of what he wants.
Yeah, and anything he gets, if he gets anything of what he wants, that also causes more nightmares for the Germans.
And some spreading alarm for everyone else.
Yeah. Japanese are going to go bankrupt.
Because a few people don't actually realise quite how insane Stalin's plans for the Red Fleet actually were. He was not interested in half measures.
No, he really wasn't.
He wanted to leverage Russia's enhanced industrial capacity after his forced industrialization to build a battle fleet that would be the either second or first most powerful in terms of raw battleship numbers in the world.
Whether America and Britain ever allowed him to get that close is another matter. So in theory,
Oh,
after the
boy.
second London Naval Treaty, the Iron could have thrown out several light carriers, unicorns, for recon, commerce, suppression, transport, and other minor duties that could be taken from the fleet carriers. Yes, they could have done. And in many ways, the reason they're not is because because the Treasury is still trying. It's only whilst officially the 10-year rule has ended in 1932. In practice, it's only actually ended in 1937, and because you're building up yards, etc. Although this did lead to an interesting conversation with someone the other day, which was actually the conversation with Drac was how many yards in Britain could actually build battleships. And once you work out that the yards which are building aircraft carriers, and the ships which are taking aircraft carriers, and the ships which are taking battleships, etc., are all pretty much the size, and the large cruiser designs are all pretty much the same size. And then you start looking down the list of going, okay, have you got cranes which can take this weight? Oh, you have got cranes that you can take that weight, and you have got this stuff, that stuff. There was a very interesting article published a few years ago which tried to claim that Britain only had about 4 yards which could build battleships in 1939. And it was widely circulated, but the trouble is the papers which came out afterwards, which basically disproved it completely, did not end up being widely circulated, because for some reason the people who were interested in trying to point out new history, British Navy couldn't be built massive, couldn't build itself up, didn't have the infrastructure in 1939, were not interested in circulating the counter arguments which came out, which pointed out that it was factually incorrect and based off a flawed perspective. But basically, it had narrowed down the criteria for what how a yard could build a battleship to such a finite thing that it basically made even one of the yards, which was actually building a King George V, was on its list of couldn't build a battleship.
You do have to wonder sometimes.
Also, as I said, there are
where
certain
are we
factors which
now?
the British have with slip layers, etc. modification. Paul Amos, if you were Defence Secretary in 1956, what would you have done to help the British defence industry work to counter the effects of American influence?
Not be the British governments of the period. Basically, do literally anything else than what they were doing. Because the British policy towards defence spending and its defence industry, and heck, it's just general manufacturing and industrial base regarding the production of ships, tanks, and aircraft in this period was basically acquire handgun, load handgun, point at foot, pull trigger.
Look, anything, if actually the biggest problem was actually consistency. You just needed to take a plan and stick with it. And that was the big problem for Britain. They kept changing their mind, and it's still the problem today. We've just had a massive defence review, and now new government in, having a new defence review and going, now we must consider that we must sacrifice white elephants and big, You sit there and go, what white elephants have survived? You're telling me something which survived the last 3 defence reviews is not going to survive the next defence review because now suddenly in the 12 months it's become a white elephant? No, it's government spending priorities. But also, and I do love this, I can almost predict, okay? I'm going to see RAF and Army officers saying we need to get rid of aircraft carriers and carrier strike. I'm going to see RAF and Navy officers saying we're going to need to get rid of tanks. I am going to see Navy and Army officers saying we're going to need to get rid of some parts of the RAF. Usually they tend to focus in on the RAF regiment. And we're going to see some part of the Army saying we need to get rid of the Royal Marines. And, and usually these are the retired officers speaking and making this case, and just, you just want to go, shut up. Shut up, you little children. Excuse the French there. But honestly, we have reached the point where we know carrier strike is useful. Okay, there is anyone arguing that is silly. And when you start to get the basic case of the idea of, oh, by the way, the Russians aren't scared of the British having carrier strike. What you need is more F-35s from land bases operating in Poland. You go, land bases, which are going to be within range of Russian land-based missiles. So those bases can be taken out. And are known, because you can find their location using this mythical tool known as Google. Or you want to spend a lot of money building a base in another country, or do you want to launch those F-35s from the UK, fly them all the way across Europe, drop bombs, and then return to the UK?
I would also point out that I'm just going to say something that might be highly controversial, but in regards to those retired officers, okay, you've said all these things. Now show me the rubles. Show me the rubles the Kremlin paid you to say that.
It's fun times. It's always fun times. It happens every time. And the weird thing is, Fleet, they don't require rubles to say it. They honestly believe they're talking the truth. It's just, you sit there and go, but this logical fact. Well, no, that doesn't count. And, I just watch the Twitter debates and just go, okay, I'm not getting involved anymore. I used to. When I was younger, I used to get involved in debates on Twitter and all these things, and I used to believe it would actually have an effect on stuff. No, I don't. I send in a paper to the Defence Review. I send in these things. I work as if someone calls me up and asks me to research something, I do. But I don't get involved in Twitter debates anymore. I don't see the point. It's a waste of my time. I use Twitter and those social medias for advertising my work, and that's it. I don't get involved in debates on them. I don't see the point. I honestly don't see the point in gaining the stress. And that's one of the reasons why I've also reduced basically the comments to I'm doing for larger ones where I think it's going more to contentious. They're usually scuttlebutt responses, because also the point is there are a couple of good commentators on my channel who comment away, but who are so close to being wereboos, it's quite disturbing. And then there are full wereaboos. And I now have worked out how to work out the difference between the two. But you sit there and go,
how do you work out the difference?
Do they actually listen to your reasoned argument?
Ah.
But, there are some which you just sit there and go, I can't be bothered. I just cannot be bothered with you.
I do not have the time. Basically.
Especially at the moment. Okay. Hearing of the reports of the attack on Pearl Harbor, FDR has a heart attack and dies. How could this change the war and its outcome?
You've unleashed Truman on the war effort early. I am concerned.
He loses the election. He would not win the next election.
Truman became the president he became because of what he saw during the Second World War, of what he saw FDR do, of how FDR acted. It had a big impact on him.
Yeah. Truman earlier on is nowhere near.
Yeah, he literally watched his boss kill himself for his country. And that really put something into Truman. The Truman that takes office in 1945 is just... He's different than the man he was a year ago, which is different than the man he was a year before that. It cannot be overstated just quite how... different.
All 92, and then there's the why won't you debate me crowd. Yeah, they're fun. It's I'm expecting at least some... I was expecting to have more of a response on my channel, as I'm somehow more obviously British than Drakenfell, which I cannot understand how people do how that has happened. About the whole alter history on Churchill thing. And I'm just going... You don't want to do this to me, because I'm one of the people who admits what Churchill's faults are and is quite happy to discuss Churchill's faults, but also will make the defence when it's needs to be. So I can really have fun on this subject. But also, there is part of me who just doesn't bother it, because if you're trying to honestly make the case, and I think that's what the historian was, trying to claim that that Churchill from the background was manipulating things more powerfully than the government, I was writing things. I went, you have no idea how the British political system works, A, and B, you've obviously never done any study into the British political system. Because...
And also never been in any large organisation, because one doesn't just simply manipulate.
So Churchill was, as on the outside, yes, yelling very loudly. But no, I would say he has less power over British foreign policy at that time than Admiral Henderson does. And Henderson's the third Sea Lord.
Yep.
Chatfield certainly has more power over British foreign policy than Churchill does. And he's the first Sea Lord. And it's a case of, in the nicest way, Churchill just doesn't have that capability. And a lot of his capability, a lot of his power to take, and the reason why he's a candidate for Prime Minister versus Halifax when Chamberlain's decided to retire, is because a huge group has gathered around him because he was right over the war, but also because he'd been on the outside. And a lot of people suddenly swapped and went, no, Churchill was right. I always supported Churchill to protect their own positions. Some of the people who have been the worst people, and by the way, this includes Churchill, in pushing for disarmament and various other points and not spending money on defence, suddenly become the most ardent Churchill supporters in 1939 after war starts. And that's not because they're not because Churchill was powerful in 1937, 1938, or any point earlier in the 1930s. It's because they are shoring up their own position. So yeah, yeah, it's fun. Truman wasn't vice president at the time of Pearl Harbor. It was Wilkie Wallace.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah. No, Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace, not Wilkie Wallace. Sorry, John South is just reminding me. Oh, yeah, that's Henry Wallace is an interesting character. That would be worse than Truman. Okay, we were discussing on Thursday, as well as attacking the lock gates of the Panama Canal. Aircraft from an I-400 can also fly 3 aircraft with incendiaries down Chesapeake Bay and attempt to bomb both the White House and the Capitol. Could this work if it's time to go in with the Pearl Strike on 7th December? It could work. Let's be honest, in December 1941, the US is as open as a empty field.
I mean, yeah, it'll work. It's a really, 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 really bad idea.
Oh, it'll work.
But
it won't cause anything like destruction. It'll just cause destruction, but not anything like destruction.
Oh no! The reason why I say it's a really bad idea is launching a surprise attack on the U.S. Capitol and burning possibly the White House is really, like, if you thought the U.S. were annoyed before when the Pearl Harbor attack happened, yeah, congratulations, you just burned down one of their national monuments.
To be fair though, the British have done that in the past and we got away with it.
Yes, the difference is though that was basically us sending them a message saying we could end you, and we're just not going to. Whereas Japan cannot end the United States of America.
No, and there's a difference between the War of 1812 and World War II.
Yes. Yes, all of these things.
Have I ever had pea meal bacon? No. Turkey bacon is about as nouveau as I'm going. In relation to your statement of Hood being less prominent re-battleship maximum question then, does Hood get her refits on time? Potentially. Because if she's less important, she actually might. She's much easier to put into a refit. Question, and nice to go for everyone. Question 217. How likely is it that the 15 Leander, 8 1934 refuses, 16 Town Class be built, which are shared amongst Iran and Dominions before World War II, that if the first naval treaty doesn't limit cruiser numbers? Oh, if the first naval treaty doesn't limit cruiser numbers, i.e. doesn't have cumulative tonnage, those cruisers get built.
Absolutely.
Primarily, it's a job creation scheme. That's what the cruisers are about. They're a job creation scheme. There's a reason why the Royal Navy calls them towns and counties. Let's be honest. If you want, who's going to cancel it unless it's employing people? There's also a reason why the Type 26 names have all been released by the Royal Navy. And they are all key constituencies. Have a look at them. If in the nicest way, the last ship in the class to be on Type 26, i.e. the one which is most exposed, is which one? HMS London.
Oh, that's a masterful move on the half of the Royal Navy there. Well done, lads.
Government cancels London.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's mildly evil.
No.
It's at least neutral. Actually, I think we can open the questions up a bit longer because we're still okay to go a bit longer. How long are you okay for?
Time is it? 10:15. I will have to dip at about 11 o'clock. That's about the latest I can go.
So we could probably let in about another 5 to 6 questions, I think, Runon, if that's okay with you.
I would also like to have a quick word after Bruships ends quickly. With
That's fine.
Alex,
I
that's
know.
all right.
I know. We have to do some admin stuff, and then I have to talk tomorrow more about admin stuff because someone had ideas on the last time I chatted with them. It's just I've been too tired to actually contact you. Go. Yeah, they have ideas.
And you're telling me this now?
Oh, there are ideas.
Oh.
There are ideas, and there are ideas. There are ideas, and it might extend to something different, but that could cause fun.
All right, okay. Let's get through this. You can tell me in a bit.
Yeah. Someone had very personal ideas, which could scare the living daylights out of all of us. So, if the Americans offered the UK a license for the P&W Twin Wasp in 1937, does the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm try to grab that as their exclusive motor to escape Air Ministry rationing on the Merlin? The thing is, even having a license, the problem with the RNFAA is not getting engine designs. It's that every time they get an engine, you have to remember the Royal Navy's the ones who ordered 2,000 horsepower engines. The Air Ministry's in control of overall air production. They've been put in charge of aircraft procurement, including engine procurement, and they keep nabbing them and going, actually, no, we need that engine you've been ordering for your aircraft for hours. So it doesn't matter what design is. If it's being built in the UK, it responds to them. And that's what causes the Fleet Air Arm the most trouble with engine procurement. Which is one of the reasons why the Royal Navy goes quite so American quite so quickly. Because they see the writing on the wall. They see the writing on the wall. They see that the RFC spent its most of World War I complaining about the Admiralty getting preferential treatment from the companies in terms of their aircraft engines and the supplies. And the Royal Navy turned around and went, this is because we order engines and supplies as part of the original deal. That's ungentlemanly. And also because we actually don't treat the people who are industrious who are building these things like they're dirty oiks. Quite literally, there is a statement of a general who was in charge of procurement calling a Vickers manager who told him he couldn't do something, he couldn't supply something today, a dirty upstart who didn't know who he was speaking to. And for some reason, I can't understand why, the largest defence manufacturer in the UK was suddenly very uninterested in answering that general's needs in the middle of a war. Now, I'm not saying the Royal Navy admirals are always that much better, but the thing is, the Royal Navy admirals who are actually Third Sea Lord and who are actually anything to do with procurement usually are better. The ones who the ones who can't be let near any of the industrialists are kept firmly away from them. Preferably the other side of the globe. The China station is very useful. Go. We will post you to Chile as our admiral and a naval attaché, in the senior naval attaché in South America.
Now I'm so glad Rule the Waves has added both officers and an ability to do that to them. Literally, every time the post of, we want to send a naval attaché to Switzerland, I have just the man for the post. I found my most incompetent admiral, then yeet him off to Switzerland.
Yep.
Goodbye! Don't come back! Oh dear. Where are we?
Question:
What's
were
the next
specialized
question?
mining subs a good investment by the outcome, or were they were a good investment? Especially according to World War One
Of course.
era.
Oh yeah, bear in mind, mine link subs were fantastic. It's as you get towards Second World War that navies start to go, our torpedo tubes are big. What if we put mines in our torpedo tubes? Wow.
Question 16.
And then like a light bulb goes off in everyone's head and it's like, wow, we could do this.
Napier starts work early on the Sabre and has a Sabre 3,500 horsepower, 4,000 horsepower with war boost, with all the kinks worked out by 1940. How does this change the war? Well, Spitfires suddenly start breaking the speed of sound on a regular basis, and there are some very, very upset members of the German Luftwaffe during the Battle of Britain.
Yeah, basically.
And Lord knows, imagine if they built if they use 4 of those on a Lancaster.
What a horrifying thought.
Imagine how many bombs it could carry.
What a horrifying thought.
Imagine a Mosquito with 2 of those.
What a horrifying thought.
I'm wondering if it would actually shatter itself. It would be going so fast.
That is a horrifying thought.
It might not. It could actually slow jet development, though.
Not really. You're looking at like jet aircraft is running independent to thing is like jet engine development and jet aircraft development in the RAF in Britain is running independent of whatever the RAF needs. Like it's saying like we are just running along at the pace we're running along to deliver you a jet aircraft that will function and the jet fighter aircraft that will function. You focus on getting the piston-engined aircraft you need for war needs, and we'll just keep going at a good pace to give you a jet aircraft. This is the thing that makes RAF jet development different to German jet development. The Germans basically panic and do lots of weird and wacky, wonderful MacGuffin nonsense to try and get jets in and come up with all sorts of weird and wacky ideas for war use. The British go, we're happy with piston-engined aircraft, you just keep working away with them and just tell us what you come up with. It's the reason why the Meteors aren't rushed out to Europe in 1945 despite actually being ready to go.
Yeah. Question 216 from Knight. If the RN had 16 Didos, 12D and 13 C-Class A cruisers, by a 1942 World War II outbreak, where would you expect most of them to see action during the war? Mediterranean.
Probably.
If you have, let's see, that's that's 41 AA cruisers. Yeah, that they're going to be spending a lot of time in Mediterranean. A lot of time in Mediterranean. Let's be honest, that's the major things.
Yep.
And Dirt Squad. Could a signatory of the naval treaties design and send all the parts for a capital ship to a non-signatory? The non-signatory is building the ship, not the signatory. Not. It's a tough one. Because they have to give them the details of any ships they're building themselves, but if if the other person's building it, they're just supplying parts.
And that, I'll be back in a second. That's given while I'm going to go get a drink. That's a thought. They
could probably do that. They could probably do that. because they are not building the ship. The parts that are just being assembled. It's not going to be something which isn't spotted in terms of the guns and turrets being assembled. They're going to be quite big objects going on a ship. So not going to be invisible to other people. But again, engines and all those things are being built all the time, and they could be just acquired through non-purpose. Once you're acquiring guns and turrets, those are big things. It's going to depend on how much you are building yourself and assembling. So if you get things like the turret mechanism developed, etc., if you buy, let's say, the armor from Czechoslovakia, you buy the turret mechanisms and guns from Britain, you buy the engines from America, you could spread it out and probably actually get away with it. But a single power supplying it all to someone is where it gets problematic. But not impossible again. USS Montana 67, when is next stream? Well, when I'm better, they are for every Thursday and every Sunday night I do a live stream, and there are recorded videos throughout the week. At the moment, while I'm getting better till about October, I'm going to be just doing the Sunday streams. I'm going to be joining Fleet again on Monday evening, and I'm going to be chatting away as often as I can, and I'm going to... Bilge Pumps is hopefully going to return soon. And going to be coming out on this channel. It's going to be coming out as a YouTube podcast, because that saves SimSec a lot of money and a lot of trouble. But yeah, usually my lives are Thursday and Sunday nights. At the moment, the Thursdays aren't happening. They are supposed to be happening, but so far they haven't for the last 2 weeks. But they're being patron premieres instead. So I'm trying to do patron premieres on at least one patron premiere a week and one live to sort of make up for it, because the coughing has gone away, and I'm not sort of coughing so much unless I bend over. If I try and touch my knees or anything like that, I will be coughing for the next 20 minutes. I'm getting better about that, but you know. But at the moment it's purely the stamina. It's like tonight I was planning to be unboxing and putting box of books up on the shelves, but I just, the moment I've sat down since I built the shelves, I haven't gone up because it's just getting energy to get up, and that feels so bad to say, but it's as said, I am recovering from double pneumonia, and it was let to go quite a long time. And I have someone who's reminding me that I'm supposed to not be on here for too much longer. And I won't be on here for past 11 o'clock, so, you know, that'll be okay. What idea have you had, young Master Fu, while wandering around? And speaking of things, I'm going to get something to get a drink. I'm back in a second.
I didn't actually, I tried to think about how that would actually work.
Hello.
In regards to
Can I have a bottle?
the naval treaties and deciding as such.
I think it's such a grey area they could actually get round.
It's possible, but I'm iffy at best about it.
It is certainly a fun one. It's a fun one. Hello, camera. I'm here. I love this tracking software. It sort of goes, hang on, he went down. He's over there. Where is he? So, next question. What if the Sibian Sea or if Sibian Sea, all available US subs and sub aces that can be gathered just end up on the path of the extended force throughout this journey? It's sunk. That's it. If they got that many submarines on that path, they're sunk. That's what happens.
Yep.
Sadly, it's just a fact of life and attrition. There are only so many submarines you can deal with as an escorting force at any one point, and that many aces, that many capable submariners in your path, you're going to be in trouble. You're probably dealing with something like 40, 50 submarines.
Yep, basically.
Yeah, that's just... Yeah,
you're going to have a bad time.
you're gonna have so much attrition. You're going to either be actually be completely killed or be effectively knocked out. It's either going to be a complete kill or a mission kill of the force. Were the purpose-built mining submarines prior to World War II a good use of submarine construction versus normal sub? Yes, they were. They were. Let's be honest. The Rainbow class. They have finished. We did. We had an earlier question, which was, were they useful? I think it was that was a general one, and we then said Ian talked about World War One submarine mine-laying submarines and how useful they were. They literally almost won the war for Germany, but the World War Two ones were still very useful. You know, the thing was, the British especially ended up using theirs a lot more for supply runs to Malta and those sort of things. But realistically, if they'd been able to use them as they'd intended for operations, when you're talking about things like dealing with the Japanese, and they'd been able to attend it, the idea would be they would have mined several of the critical channels in the South China Sea to get into the South China Sea and into those straits. And those mines could have been very dangerous for the Japanese forces. They would have been. You would have had no knowledge of those submarines having been there. They'd have snuck in, deployed quite a hefty minefield fairly accurately. And let's be honest, parachute dropped mines are the trouble, as they're not always that accurate where they end up. And then disappeared. Yep. And there's a fairly dense, dangerous minefield in your path, and you go charging in, you're gone. Will I be on Discord chat after or another evening? I will try and do it on Thursday. I will also try and do it on Tuesday after the video goes live on Tuesday. Because there is a video scheduled for Tuesday as well, a recorded video. Which I'm going to re-record tomorrow, probably at some point. I have found the upload is sufficiently slow here. I usually have to do it the day before. Make sure it's done the day before uploading it. We've got fibre optic, we haven't got full fat fibre. Because full fat fibre has not spread this far down our road. Let me use that emphasis. It's not spread this far down our road. It is in this postcode, but it has not reached this far down the road. And I've had the honest conversation with BT along lines of, why is it not this far down my road? And they've gone, well, you need to express your interest online on our website. And I'm going, I will do that. But I'd like to know why you stopped 6 houses up my road from me. And they were quite disturbed to know that I'd worked out that there were only 6 houses away from me.
Oh dear. So where are we? Final few questions now.
Yeah, it's literally last 2 questions, my friend. Last 2 questions. I know you're getting tired. You need your beauty sleep.
Yeah, Fleet needs his beauty sleep for his last 3 days of work.
Yeah. And then we need to find you a new, better job. You are the French Minister of War in 1870. Which naval architects do you guillotine first?
Now, first things first, having been someone who did a great deal of research as part of a project I did with a few other people regarding leading a bunch of nations through from 1870 through to the 1920s, the thing is, if you're in 1870, you don't need to guillotine naval architects, because if it's 1870, you're actually in the period prior to the Franco-Prussian War. You're in the period prior to the real malaise setting into the French fleet. You don't guillotine naval architects. By all accounts, French naval architects are actually producing some of the most powerful ironclads in the world, things equivalent to anything the RN's building at the time. The central battery ironclads are arguably ahead of the RN's, usually because they don't announce their presence with a massive column of water from the ram bow. But if it's 1870, you basically just as soon as someone says, "Hey guys, I come with this idea for the Je ne Cole," you take him outside,
I think the corgi is eating something he's not supposed to be. I'll be back in a second.
Put him under the guillotine, and do so in rapid and brutal fashion.
Okay.
No.
What's happening?
It's alright. I went to the bin.
Because I don't want to deal with the outcome of Je ne Cole. I'll also buy a great deal of additional coal
That's fine.
And
Just leave-
I'll also
I'll take
I'll
them
also
off for a
massively
second. I don't need to
expand
talk
French's reserves, so that when push comes to shove, when
Yeah.
Germany invades, I'm not going to be short on coal. I'm not going to be short on men. And I am going to blockade the Prussian upstart back into the place they belong, and ensure that the second-ranked naval power will always and forevermore be the French Empire. No republic. Vive l'Empereur!
I'm not sure whether that idea is more strange, or the idea of the Corky having the idea he could help with the bins by eating the stuff out of the bins. Luckily, he was stopped. Getting the French to be the second-ranked naval power, yeah.
Well, they are in 1870. They just need to make sure they stay there.
Getting them to stay there, yes. They are in 1870 by default, by the fact that the Americans have stopped building stuff.
You've basically got to keep France in the rank 2-3 slot. If you don't have the Je ne Colle, and you have a roughly similar commitment to French construction, like the idea of trying to build a battle fleet is the way that France maintains its naval power, I can easily see France having a second or third largest fleet, at least up until Germany and America get going. And even then, the French might just go, "You're trying to overtake us? Throw more money into the navy." Because it's France, and they're being threatened by the Germans. It's what they do.
Knight 6831, I think your questions keep being deleted. I would say the reason is because they're trying to protect me and make sure I actually finish on time and don't push myself too far, which I do have to watch myself under recovery. But I would say for those questions of full load displacement, if you look up Norman Freeman's book on British aircraft carriers, that has pretty good figures for HMS Eagle in 1918. And if you compare them to Admiralty Cochrane, that gives you a rough idea of the translations. There are similar enough figures that, that should work. Now,
Napoleon the Third is this weird. Just to say, because someone said I never thought I'd see the Napoleon the Third fan. Napoleon the Third is somehow someone who is incredibly competent but incredibly stupid, and is both of those things at the same time in the same field. Which
he's proof humans are complicated creatures.
Yeah. Like, 1 minute he can be an incredibly smooth political operator, and then the next thing he can blunder so aggressively it's not even funny. He can be quite smart militarily, and then mess up in spectacular fashion. He defies...
No,
he defies being pigeonholed.
He does something well, he starts to believe his own hubris, he takes a gamble which he shouldn't do, mucks it up, and then goes back to not believing his hubris. He basically oscillates between believing believing himself to be infallible and actually being sensible. He is the living incarnation of Julius Caesar, who's a similar personality.
Wouldn't Julius Caesar be the living incarnation of Julius Caesar?
By his time period.
It's alright. It's alright, I'll see myself out.
Thank you.
That was a bad joke.
That was a very, very bad joke. We'll leave that on one side. But basically, the admins are being quite strict with me because they have, I think, been told by Dr. Dan just how ill I managed to make myself, or rather, how ill various combinations managed to make me. Because of the constant belief that people under 40 do not get pneumonia, apparently, according to some doctors. I'm not sure what Dr. Dan has done to them, but I believe they will never say that again. Canadian government goes all in on the RCN post-World War II, buying 4 Censure, building several dozen Daring class, rebuilding such a fleet every few decades as needed, along with refits.
They do not have the
What
money.
happens? Well, basically, honestly...
They go bankrupt.
Well, the Canadian government actually could go all that, but they just wouldn't be building the army, they wouldn't be doing half the social services they do, and they would need to also aggressively invest in infrastructure to promote business and they grow their economy. But you have to remember that that Canada, basically, they supply the oil for America. A large amount of the largest volume of oil for the American economy that they import comes from Canada. And it accounts at various points for a huge percentage of the American oil intake, or oil usage of actually pragmatic oils, because the Canadian oil fields are, and natural gas fields are quite so rich and quite so pure.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, the Canadians can theoretically, if they run it right, bootstrap their economy to support that kind of force. But they would need to aggressively boost their. They would almost need to Singaporean style focus on economy, education, economy, and defense. Basically, do what Singapore has done, because the reason Singapore can run the size armed force it does from the base it has is because it's one of its core focuses, and it focuses on education as the underpinning of both of them, and economy to grow it all. And that's what Singapore does.
Yeah.
And you can agree with how the decisions they make, you can disagree with decisions they make. I don't care. Frankly, I agree and disagree with some of the decisions they made myself. But what I will say is they have been shameless about that focus, and that is why they are in the situation they are in now. One of the few things you can focus on about the Singaporean government is they haven't lost focus or deviated from focus on those three things for about the last, you can argue, the last 80 years. They have been single-mindedly focused on those things the whole time, and that is what they focus on.
Uh-huh. I mean, heck, one of the unintended side effects of this is it might actually cause the British government to pull its finger out rather than be upstaged by
The Canadians.
the Royal Canadian Navy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Although what I reckon you will see is, if we're talking about fleet replacement every few years, what you might have is the Canadians and British doing joint carrier development. So, like when the British are looking to replace their older carriers in the late 60s, you might have the Canadians buying into the CVA-01 program.
It could well be that sort of scenario.
So the Canadians will buy 2, the British will buy 3 for a total build out of 5, which will make it economically viable for both governments.
Or if the Canadians are building 4 and keeping to a 4 fleet, then the British will of course have to keep to about 6. So they'll be buying 10.
Which will make it even more economically viable and actually probably revitalise British large shipbuilding industry.
Yeah, because also
at a time when it desperately needs it.
This is the point that me and Drac, and I think Fu also makes, and quite a lot of people make, is that one of the problems you have with modern ships, and the reason they're expensive, is because building the first ship is incredibly expensive. But it gets cheaper the more of a class you build. Because you're able to reuse the jigs, you're able to reuse the experience, you've got the trained personnel. You don't have to, in terms of the construction. So this is why I think it was the I think the Type 23s, the first batch are somewhere in the region of £180 million per unit. By the time you're getting down to the last ones, they're about £40 million per unit. And
the more of a weapon system you build, the cheaper it is. It's always been the case. It's one of the reasons why militaries have no problem procuring rifles.
Yeah.
And never have had a problem with procuring rifles. The only exception to this are the Ottomans during the late 19th century, but well, that's the Ottomans during the late 19th century.
They're special. They are special. But again, the whole point is this: if Japan, the whole point of that was, as said, it's consistency, and that's the big trouble you have in a lot of modern governments: is you do not have consistency. You have changes, not just every time the government changes, but every time the minister changes, and sometimes even while the minister changes, even while it's the same minister, it can change, because they suddenly focus in on new buzzwords, or they wake up on the wrong side of the bed and suddenly don't like the person they were talking to the previous day, or all sorts of things. It's
democracy. It's wonderful.
Democracy,
but I would point out the same issues plague dictatorships as well.
They do. In a nice way, it plagues all government. It tries to get consistency out of humans, who are famously inconsistent. And usually, for you to get consistency out of humans, you need to have something for them to focus on. and arguably the end of history concept and all those things which came out of the end of the Cold War have really caused all the problems we're dealing with now. Because they meant we lost focus.
Getting long-term commitment out of anybody these days is difficult.
Long term for a politician is the next 24 hours these days. It's the, it's the news cycle. And that's a problem. And that doesn't... That, by the way, that's not just politicians in democracies, that's politicians anywhere. You know, the big strides China used to make, where in many ways it's gerontocracy and is geriocratic dictatorship style, i.e. the people who got in power who are old and expect to be in power till they died. And so they would make some long-term decisions. But the thing is, that isn't the same today. And that's a problem. You're dealing with a lot of nations in the world. There are lots of issues of this, you know, in terms of what's that saying? Nations grow strong when old men plant trees. They will never see the cover, the shade of. Well, look around the world and look at any nation actually doing that at the moment. And that saying has been true throughout history. When Britain was at their height, we were investing in infrastructure, we were investing in all sorts of things, so much so that, frankly, that was how we were able to fight 2 world wars based off the infrastructure we've been building for the first one, because the generation we lost in World War One, especially the group that volunteered first, were mostly the people who are most interested in long-term thinking. I would say World War, you lose a lot of people in World War One and World War Two who are the nation builders, because they're usually the people who are most loyal, I'm not going to say most loyal, who are most motivated to join up and serve their nation first. And that's why when Kennedy asked the question, asked not what your nation can do for you, but what you can do for your nation, seems so revolutionary at that point. But you wouldn't have had to say that to the people prior to World War One and prior to World War Two. You wouldn't have had to say that. There was enough of a body of politics of people who understood that. But the people who came back from World War One World War Two had either lost a lot of the people who'd been like that, or a large number of those people had been so disillusioned by the war, so damaged by the war, they weren't able to be that way. You know, we often forget the huge trauma done to nations. You know, we talk about the number of people the French lost in terms of dead at Verdun and various things in World War One. What people often forget is the huge number of people who came home as wounded, physically and psychologically, and how that affected their economy and their nation.
It really did. I don't know. I think it's actually quite fair to say France never quite recovered from I don't think it still has recovered from the World Wars. It didn't break France as a nation, but it damaged it to the point that... Yeah.
Ooh! Stafford Thompson has just said something which could be very interesting. If passing my HEV license or test on Friday, and license includes coach buses, if you look into a tour bus, I'll be happy to drive it for the group during Naval Canadian History Mark II. Oh.
Are we getting a private bus? Oh boy.
Oh, that could be fun, because you can get coaches which have full accommodations on them, and have
I'd be happy with that.
And that could be very having a tour bus. Oh, the ship-shaped tour bus. Oh, good lord!
Ship-shaped bus.
We
have to name it. It has to be named.
No, even worse. I know between Gareth and Drac, they will want to put a wrap on that bus. They will want to have an image and logo on it. They will be...
I'm not letting them name it Warspite. I'm sorry, I can't. I have limits. I can't
Lord.
let them name it Warspite.
No, I'm just... After having seen the sheer number of emails and discussions we had over the coins, the challenge coins, right? I'm just thinking about the sheer length of discussion that would be over that bus's rap.
I want to call it Bertie.
You can
I want to call it Bertie the bus. Look, I am a simple man. I see bus. I want to call it Bertie.
Oh god, you can have
I
that.
want to paint it red.
You can have that argument.
I want to paint it red.
You can have that discussion.
I will have that argument.
All right then. I'm going to say thank you very much, everyone, and yeah, historians on the move. So
Yeah.
I think that's
thank you very much for putting up with. Yeah. Thank you very much for putting up with my less knowledgeable discussions, people. I just try to help Dr. Clarke keep going as best I can. He's done the same for me.
Thanks, Fu. It's been very kind of you, and thank you everyone for watching and putting up with us, and thank you for all the support towards getting the shelves. And,
yes, thank
the
you
books.
for supporting Dr. Clarke.
And please do support
shelves.
Fu's patron, because we want him to keep talking over everyone. It's fun having him along, and he needs some support on it. I'm not sure. What do you do for your patron? Because for mine, they get questions, and they get to put in topics, and then they vote on which topics get turned into videos. What's your patron? What's your thing you're offering?
Well, I currently just have one tier. I just have one tier that says you're actually helping me out. I'm very grateful. That is about $3. I think it's $3 or $5. I can't remember which.
Okay.
But because I only have like a few people supporting me. But if I get more people, obviously I'll look towards actual benefits for it. So possibly a £5 tier, which will give people one ramblings question a week.
Or the other option you could do, because I wouldn't do this because Twitch is my fun relaxing, so I'm not going to do this. I mean, I just open it up in Twitch chat. But you could ask people to suggest scenarios they want you to play on the games.
That could work.
Because that could be a fun thing for you to do.
Yeah, that's not a bad
And
idea.
you're good enough with gaming, and that's what, to be honest, that's what Garrus the Brit does to an extent. It could be interesting.
Could be.
And that could be a fun one. So, because you do all the games, and you have all the mods for Hearts of Iron 4 and all those things.
Bruships and Foo ships. You know what, Steve? I want to put that on the side of the bus. Bruships and Foo ships. That is a... You know what? That's a slogan. That is right there. That's inspired.
Brewbus.
Brewbus! Yes, the Brewbus!
Oh,
yes,
Stafford, in the nicest way, if we can if we can rent a bus, you're definitely going to be there as a driver. So if we can sort it out, it'll be fun.
The Brewbus. Right. Okay, I don't want to keep Alex for too long, so...
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Yes,
Montana 6. Can we finance a city bus? We'll see. We'll see what we can do. Because the thing is, if we do, the Canada 2, our idea has been to we want to do Hyder again, but we also want to do a lot more of the West Coast, because we did the East Coast. But I think also we want to visit Halifax again, and we're basically going, right, this is going to be a fun trip. This is a fun trip, but that has been worked out. And there's also ideas of, shall we factor in some of the Great Lakes stuff, etc. So actually a bus would make it very, very practical, but that's probably a couple of years away, because we've got about the next 3 trips planned, the big ship-shaped trips. And when I say we've got them planned, I'm in negotiations with cruise lines about 2 of them, because there's honestly a chance.
I don't know how I'm gonna fit into all this. Like, I want to come along and I want to help, but I don't know if I'm gonna financially be able to.
Well, the cruise lines, if it works out as we wanted to, in the nicest way, the thing is going to be we're able to go on the cruise. The cruise lines are basically going, as long as you give talks while you're aboard, you travel for free, and we're going to advertise it to an extent of you guys being there, so we'll be able to have some people along with us as well. And as said,
very nice.
The plan is to fundraise, especially enough for Japan to pay for the accommodation and flights. That's always what we fundraise for. We fundraise for the accommodation, the flights, and the travel costs. Everything else we pay for ourselves. So food, books, everything.
In that case, then I should also be able to.
And we're hoping with Japan that we might do some mild hookups, because we have no qualms about saying this. Yeah, this airline's business class was wonderful to fly to Japan in, if they'll give us free tickets. We are for sale on that front, because
I will sell out. I will sell out.
In the
Yeah, I'm
nicest
selling
way.
out 110%. Yeah.
If they wanted me to talk about a history thing, I would go, no, I have standards here. But for quality of air, if they're giving me free tickets to Japan, I will quite happily say they're good. And let's be honest, they're business. It's hopefully a business class ticket, so I don't. Again, this sounds egotistical, but I tend to go economy premium, and economy premium and emergency exit aisle, so I have legroom. That's basically it. Legroom and butt room, because my colleagues who did not do that on the trip to Australia. They just booked economy tickets on the idea they could get cheap upgrades at the gate, and then found themselves on a full flight. Had a very interesting trip to Australia, and for the first 48 hours in Australia, I was dealing with two zonked, slightly ill colleagues in Perth because of the flight. To the extent that one of them ended up at the wrong hotel. And my view, I was sitting there going, so yeah, spending slightly more money on the flight was sensible. Yes.
Look, I'm one who likes his comforts, okay? Like, I wouldn't quite say I'm a travel snob, but I like things to be slightly more comfortable when I'm traveling. I will pay. Like, if trains have compartments, I'm having a compartment.
We haven't got confirmed dates for Japan yet, but it's probably going to be similar dates to Scandinavia this year. That's what it's looking at. It's shaping up as. We have
honestly,
our timeline is dictated by not school timeline, but university, but also fundraising, because we want to start fundraising for Japan in January if we can, and be fundraising for months before we go to so we can pay for it well in advance and get it not like Scandinavia this year, which was a kind of a panic because we had everything worked out, but we were worrying for babies being born, all these things, we wouldn't actually be able to make it, and then we went, we can go, oh great, now crash into overdrive, sort it all out. We don't want to do that.
Oh my goodness.
Right, that was fun. So
Right.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, all the admins. I'm going to say Leslie, Stafford,
thanks, boys,
Runon,
you've done well.
Steve, everyone
And
who's been
Runon.
adminning. Melanie, I think I've seen you wandering around there. And all the people chatting away. Wayne, Constantine Montana, who else? Paul Amos, of course.
Everyone's done fantastic work.
John South, thank you for all the questions. I normally do go for everyone, but I'm starting to run out of steam, so thank you, Dave Harrison, RG, everyone. I'm scrolling up as fast as this will let me. Black Band Maximus, of course, Cody85. I think I've said 96831, but I'll say it again. And thank you, Draken Red, thank you, Raptorat, thank you, everyone who's been chatting away. John, Jacob, and John, and Team Milocca, of course, Timo. Megascrow, Seneca Nero. It's just been fun. Thank you very much, Juicy Suji and C.A. McDevitt and everyone else who's been on. Thank you very much for chatting away. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for the super chats and the super thanks and all those things which have come through. It's really helping towards the book fund. And thank you very much, everyone. Take care. And
Thank you, folks.
Crochet. Warships on starships. Oh, that'll be fun. Let's say, everyone, honestly not happy at Steve Clarke. Steve is very protective and kind of me. Night 681, they're all the admins are being very protective of me. I just treat them like that.
Steve's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, that they are being. They have had the conversation with Dan and have probably learnt far more than I would prefer to tell them. And
I will point out, Knight, you were told multiple times questions were over and you didn't listen. So I'm sorry, but the mod's got to do what the mod's got to do.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is.
Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a nice evening. Toodles.
Bye-bye.
Bye.